Chapter 76. In the tree hole, because Gao Zhenyu, Wang Ying and Guoxing joined, it immediately became crowded. They could barely sit together, but it was basically impossible for them to move their bodies, which made them feel slightly aggrieved. Qin Chuan sat on his haystack, looking at Yu Kai, who was a little uncomfortable but still silent. He sighed helplessly, tidied up his haystack, and then said to Yu Kai, "Come and sit here, it won't be too crowded." If it were Li Mani, Qin Chuan wouldn't care at all. Yu Kai blushed and looked at Qin Chuan shyly, then moved her body and sat down, which was much more comfortable than before. Qin Chuan didn't care about Yu Kai's blushing shyness. At this moment of life and death, he really wasn't in the mood to think about other things. Looking at Gao Zhenyu's group of 3 who were sitting on the other side of the tree hole, Qin Chuan's face was cold as he said in a deep voice, "It's true that I promised to escort all of you out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain range, but aren't all of you thinking too highly of me?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Gao Zhenyu and Wang Ying could only suffer in silence. They were also victims and felt wronged in their hearts. If they wanted to blame someone, they should blame Guoxing and Li Mani. If it weren't for these 2 people, they wouldn't have fallen to this point. In the face of Gao Zhenyu and Wang Ying's hateful gazes, Guoxing looked aggrieved and whispered, "I really tried to persuade Li Mani, but she didn't listen. As a man, I can't let her act alone. Anyway, Li Mani is already dead. No matter how you slander her, she can't jump out to accuse you." Qin Chuan sneered, "But don't forget that there are still ghost cultivators in this world. If the elders of the Li family come to summon Li Mani's soul back, when the time comes to testify, your lies will become shackles on your body. We all saw with our own eyes that you pushed Li Mani away. Otherwise, she wouldn't have died. I was wrong, I really know I was wrong." Guoxing also understood at this time that it was useless no matter how he explained. This matter was indeed caused by him and Li Mani. When he escaped, he did push Li Mani away. If these things were known by the elders of Li Mani's family, they would not spare him. "You shut up first. Do you want to use crying to attract the golden-haired ape?" Qin Chuan looked at Guoxing very impatiently. He really had never seen such a coward, who cried all day long like a woman. The golden-haired ape was still very scary for Guoxing. As soon as he heard Qin Chuan say that crying would attract the golden-haired ape, Guoxing immediately shut up and no longer make any sound. Seeing that Guoxing had finally calmed down, Qin Chuan looked at Gao Zhenyu and Wang Ying. Facing Qin Chuan's gaze, Gao Zhenyu and Wang Ying subconsciously trembled, as if they were worried that something bad would happen. In short, this matter was caused by Li Mani and Guoxing. The 4 of us are all victims. If we can safely leave the Cloud Dragon Mountain range, you should know what to say when the elders of Li Mani's family hold you accountable, right? Although Li Mani was said to have died in the hands of a demon beast, it should have nothing to do with them. However, no one knew if the elders of Li Mani's family would implicate them because of this. The others were protected by their family elders, so they generally wouldn't suffer any losses. However, he was different. He had no one to rely on. Maybe he would become the target of the elders of Li family to vent their anger, so he had to plan ahead and greet these people in advance. None of them were fools. Everyone could understand the meaning of Qin Chuan's words. Gao Zhenyu immediately said, "You can rest assured that when the time comes, I will definitely tell the elders of Li family about the development of the matter fairly and objectively. If the Li family wants to make things difficult for you, I will be the first to disagree." "Me too," Wang Ying said to Qin Chuan with a sincere face. "My attitude is the same as Zhenyu's. You are our savior. We will not do that kind of ungrateful thing." Although Yu Kai didn't say anything, Qin Chuan felt that Yu Kai would definitely stand on his side, so now the only one left was Guoxing facing Qin Chuan's gaze. Guoxing looked sad and said to Qin Chuan, "You can rest assured, I know what to do." Although Qin Chuan didn't particularly trust everyone's guarantee, it was better than nothing. He took a little breath and said to everyone, Today we will rest here and wait until tomorrow to see the situation. If there is no danger, awoo! While Qin Chuan was talking, a shocking roar suddenly sounded in the forest. Hearing this familiar roar, everyone's face changed. Guoxing was so scared that he almost wet his pants. Qin Chuan narrowed his eyes slightly, carefully identified the direction of the sound, and then said to everyone, "The golden-haired gorilla should be some distance away from us. We are still safe for the time being. Well, let's rest." Qin Chuan didn't arrange for anyone to keep watch at night. This place was very hidden, and the vision was not good, so there was no need for that. Hearing Qin Chuan say that they could rest, everyone's nerves, which had been tense for most of the day, relaxed. After a while, they all fell asleep, and Qin Chuan was no exception. Qin Chuan didn't know how much time had passed. When he woke up, it was dark outside. He wanted to move his body, but he woke up Yu Kai, who was hugging his arm and sleeping soundly. "You woke up?" Yu Kai was very embarrassed. She didn't know why she was holding Qin Chuan's arm in a daze. She didn't know if she was drooling or not. Fortunately, it was dark at this time, and nothing could be seen clearly. Otherwise, Qin Chuan would definitely see that Yu Kai-er's whole face was red. "This is for you." Qin Chuan took out a high-grade nutrition liquid from his backpack and handed it to Yu Kai, saying, "Eat something." At this time, Yu Kai-er's eyes had adapted to the darkness. She looked at the high-grade nutrition liquid handed by Qin Chuan and asked, very touched, "Why are you so good to me? Don't get me wrong. I don't like you, and I don't want you to marry me." Qin Chuan grinned and said, "I said that you helped me get the Thunder Spirit Stone, so I owe you a favor. Since I owe you, I should take good care of you within the scope of my ability. In addition, don't sleep for the time being after eating. I want to cultivate. Help me keep an eye on things." After thinking about it, Qin Chuan decided to immediately use the power of the Thunder Spirit Stone to advance to the Qi refining stage. In this way, he would have a greater chance to leave the Cloud Dragon mountain range alive. Chapter 77. In Qin Chuan's original plan, he planned to leave the Cloud Dragon Mountains, return to the state capital of Qing, and rent a quiet and safe practice room. Then, he would use the power of the Thunder Spirit Stone to advance to the Qi refining stage. However, he needed more power now, so he had to try to advance to the Qi refining stage in such a harsh environment. Although he would not be a match for the golden-haired gorilla even if he advanced to the Qi refining stage, he should at least be able to fight it. He would not be like a delicate porcelain that would break at the slightest touch. I promised Senior that I would wait until my brain development reached the perfect state before breaking through. Now, under such circumstances, I can only break through in a hurry. Originally, Qin Chuan wanted to wait until he returned to the state capital of Qing to test his brain development, but now it seemed that there was no chance for that. Qin Chuan sighed helplessly, then took out 2 pieces of Thunder Spirit Stone from his backpack and held them in both hands. He closed his eyes and began to operate the thunder-devouring scripture to absorb the power of thunder and spiritual energy in the Thunder Spirit Stone. In the dark, Yu Kai stared at Qin Chuan's side profile intently. Looking at Qin Chuan's focused appearance, a touch of admiration and worship involuntarily emerged in her bright eyes. In the past, Yu Kai had come into contact with a lot of geniuses. Each and every one of them was pretentious and extraordinary. It was unknown how many girls would fall in love with them. For example, Gao Zhenyu and Wang Ying were among the best. She originally thought that most of the geniuses in the world were like this, but after meeting Qin Chuan, she realized that she was wrong. From killing the Green Wolf, to obtaining the Thunder Spirit Stone, and then to leading them to escape from the golden-haired gorilla's clutches and take refuge here, Qin Chuan's performance could be said to be perfect and impeccable. Whether in terms of strength or courage, Qin Chuan was far better than any of the geniuses she had ever seen. Such a person is the real genius. Yu Kai murmured softly. She could not help but look at Gao Zhenyu and the other two who were sleeping and shook her head secretly. At this time, Qin Chuan did not know that Yu Kai was comparing him with Gao Zhenyu and the other two, but even if he knew, he probably would not take it to heart. For the current Qin Chuan, nothing was more important than improving his strength. As Qin Chuan expected, the Thunder Spirit Stone was indeed very beneficial to his cultivation. When absorbing the power of thunder in the Thunder Spirit Stone, Qin Chuan could clearly feel that the barrier that had been sealed was faintly showing signs of breaking through. Although the signs of breaking through were not obvious, at least, let Qin Chuan see the hope of advancing to the next level. Time passed little by little. Soon, the power of thunder and spiritual power contained in the two Thunder Spirit Stones in Qin Chuan's hands were completely absorbed by Qin Chuan. The Thunder Spirit Stones changed from their original blue color to a faint white color, and they were crushed with a gentle pinch. Without any hesitation, Qin Chuan grabbed 2 more Thunder Spirit Stones and continued to cultivate. In less than an hour, he changed to 2 more Thunder Spirit Stones, and this time, Qin Chuan finally felt that the barrier to the next level was clearly broken. Kacha, kacha. Qin Chuan seemed to hear the sound of the barrier to the next level being completely broken. It was as beautiful as the sound of nature. With the tree hole as the center, the spiritual energy within a radius of nearly 100 meters suddenly became active. Like a river flowing into the sea, it rushed toward Qin Chuan, who was sitting cross-legged in the tree hole. It poured into Qin Chuan's body through his pores, filling his limbs and bones, tempering Qin Chuan's muscles, bones, blood, and qi. The surge of spiritual energy woke up Gao Zhenyu and the other two who were sleeping soundly. They did not know what was going on, and they stared blankly at Qin Chuan, who was covered in blue lightning. Their minds were in chaos. What was going on? Very quickly, a stench filled the air in the tree hole, and the person who created this stench was Qin Chuan. His body had been tempered by spiritual energy and the power of lightning, and a large amount of grayish-black filth was expelled from his body. It stained his skin, turning him into a mud monkey. Seeing the changes in Qin Chuan's body, Gao Zhenyu could not help but widen his eyes and whisper, "He has advanced?" Wang Ying and Guoxing also reacted at this time. Qin Chuan's performance was clearly a phenomenon that would only occur when he advanced from the body refining stage to the qi refining stage. For a moment, everyone looked at Qin Chuan with envy. In such a dangerous environment, Qin Chuan could advance to the qi refining stage. This was something that none of them expected. This is a good thing. Gao Zhenyu pursed his lips and said, "He has advanced, and his strength has become stronger. We will also be safer." Wang Ying and Guoxing agreed with Gao Zhenyu's words. In this Cloud Dragon mountain range, they had to rely on Qin Chuan to survive. Now that Qin Chuan had successfully advanced to the qi refining stage and his strength had become stronger, it was naturally a good thing for them. As for envy and jealousy, it was human nature. After all, they were all pretentious geniuses. Seeing others step into the qi refining stage one step ahead of them, it was inevitable that some special emotions would appear in their hearts. This was normal and very reasonable. Although the air in the tree hole had become very dirty, no one had the intention to go out for a breath of fresh air. No one dared to take this risk. If they were discovered by the golden-haired gorilla, they would be finished. Qin Chuan closed his eyes and adjusted his breath for about 10 minutes, then he finished this cultivation. He slowly opened his eyes and said to everyone, "The spiritual energy riot caused by my advancement just now may attract the attention of the golden-haired gorilla. We can't stay in this tree hole, we have to leave immediately." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, the expression on everyone's face suddenly became serious. If the spiritual energy riot really attracted the golden-haired gorilla, it would not be a laughing matter. Soon, everyone started to move. They left the tree hole and quickly moved in the direction that Qin Chuan had pointed out. When they passed by a small stream, Qin Chuan didn't care if there were girls around. He directly took off his clothes and jumped in to take a bath. The feeling of being covered in dirt was too uncomfortable. Even though it was still night, Yukai could still clearly see Qinchuan's vigorous posture. His face was red like a ripe strawberry, making people have the urge to take a bite. Guoxing also took a bath with Qinchuan. He had peed his pants before, and his combat uniform was already dirty. He had endured for so long, and now was the time to take a bath. No one would think that he was wasting time. While washing his body, Qinchuan was also silently feeling the changes in his body. Compared to the body refining stage, the qi refining stage was undoubtedly more powerful. This kind of strength was not only reflected in the enhancement of the physical quality, but also reflected in the use of spiritual energy. In the past, Qinchuan could only use spiritual energy to temper his body and blood, but now, he could finally use spiritual energy in battle. Chapter 78. Is this the feeling of being in the qi refining stage? If I were to face the Thunder Beast again, I might be able to kill them. Qinchuan took a deep breath and temporarily suppressed the excitement in his heart. Although he had become a lot stronger, he was still far behind the golden-haired gorilla. Moreover, the qi refining stage was just the entry level. There was really nothing to be proud of. After sorting out his emotions and adjusting his mentality, Qinchuan wrung his clothes dry, then put them on and said to everyone, "Let's go." After a little rest, everyone set off again. Taking advantage of the darkness before dawn, they moved towards the periphery of the Cloud Dragon mountain range. Although they encountered some wild beasts along the way, they were all detected by Qinchuan in advance and killed in an instant without any delay. After running for 3 hours, Guoxing, who was the weakest, couldn't hold on any longer. His face was pale and he was sweating profusely. He followed the team weakly and begged, "Let's rest for a while, I can't hold on any longer." Gao Zhenyu and Wang Ying, who were running in front of Guoxing, couldn't help but frown. They still had plenty of physical strength and could hold on for a while. If they stopped and rested now, it would be a waste of time. As for Qinchuan and Yukai, they were not in their consideration at all. After all, Qinchuan was now a cultivator in the qi refining stage, and if Yukai was tired, she could be carried by Qinchuan. Her treatment was much better than theirs. "You hold on for a while." Gao Zhenyu frowned and said to Guoxing, "We are now racing against time. The sooner we leave, the safer we will be. If you can't hold on, then sit down and rest." Wang Ying sneered, "Anyway, we won't stop." Hearing Wang Ying's words, Guoxing didn't dare to say that he was tired anymore. He could only grit his teeth and hold on. If he was really left alone in this forest, he would have no place to cry. Qinchuan was well aware of what happened at the back of the team, but he didn't care at all. He only cared about leading the way. As for whether Guoxing and the others could keep up, it depended on their own ability. Awo! Suddenly, a shocking roar resounded not far behind them. When they heard this familiar roar, their expressions instantly became unsightly. The golden-furred gorilla was actually behind them. When Guoxing heard the golden-haired gorilla's roar, he was so scared that his legs went soft and he fell to the ground with a plop. But then he got up from the ground and ran after everyone. Seeing this scene, everyone was a little stunned. No one expected that the golden-haired gorilla's roar could have an adrenaline-like effect on Guoxing, stimulating this damn fatty's potential. To be honest, even Guoxing himself didn't know that his movements could be so agile and swift. If he wasn't forced into a corner, he wouldn't know where his limit was. "That golden-haired gorilla is chasing us. It's about 1 kilometer behind us." Qinchuan's face was calm as he told everyone this despairing news. Although he couldn't see the golden-haired gorilla's figure, he could clearly feel the existence of the golden-haired gorilla's violent aura. That aura was closing in on them at an extremely fast speed. It would definitely catch up to them in less than 10 minutes. Pada! Qinchuan suddenly braked and stopped running. Everyone didn't know why, so they stopped one after another. Everyone looked at Qinchuan, waiting for Qinchuan's arrangement. We can't keep running. We can't outrun it. We have to find a way to kill it. Qinchuan gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "Today, either it dies or we die." When he heard Qinchuan say that he wanted to kill the golden-haired gorilla, Guoxing's face instantly showed a touch of despair. That's a monster. Even a cultivator at the late stage of qi refining stage may not be able to defeat it. We are no match for it at all. Shut up. Qinchuan stared at Guoxing with extremely fierce eyes. If you are afraid of death and want to run, then get out of here now. After being reprimanded by Qinchuan, Guoxing had no intention of running away at all. If he followed Qinchuan, there might be a way to survive. If he left Qinchuan, he might die even faster. Seeing that everyone's mood was not high and they were all afraid of the golden-haired gorilla, Qinchuan made a long story short and said very quickly, "I just felt that the golden-haired gorilla's aura is much weaker than yesterday. When it gets closer to us, you will be able to feel it carefully. This is our chance. We know that it has become weaker, but it doesn't know that I have become stronger." Hearing Qinchuan's words, everyone's eyes couldn't help but light up. If the golden-haired gorilla was weakened, they might have a chance to defeat it. What should we do? Yu Kai looked at Qinchuan nervously. I have a talent rune with wind property. Maybe it can come in handy. Qinchuan pursed his lips and looked at Yu Kai seriously. I need you to help me lead the golden-haired gorilla to a specific battlefield. I will make arrangements there in advance. If you can't get there in time, you may be killed by the golden-haired gorilla. Are you confident in your speed? Yu Kai clenched her fists and looked at Qinchuan firmly. She gritted her teeth and said, "Yes." Howl. The golden-haired gorilla, who was running in the forest, opened its mouth and let out an extremely arrogant roar. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, all the wild beasts and fierce beasts that heard the roar retreated in the direction of the roar, for fear of angering the king of the forest and bringing about a disaster of extinction. The golden-haired gorilla was very satisfied with the behavior of these wild beasts and fierce beasts. It liked the feeling of being feared. However, when it thought of the several ants that dared to provoke it yesterday, the golden-haired gorilla's ugly face, which was full of hair, suddenly became gloomy. It bared its teeth to express its anger. Ever since it had killed the 2 lightning beasts yesterday, it had been searching everywhere for the whereabouts of those ants. Finally, it had discovered the aura that those fellows had left behind in the mountain forest this morning and had chased them all the way here. Now, it could clearly smell the sweet smell of flesh and blood on those ants. Very soon, it would be able to have a full meal. Clatter! The golden-haired gorilla put its big hand on a branch and gently swung it. Its body suddenly flew dozens of meters away. At the same time, a delicate figure was reflected in its eyes. Looking at the figure who was running away in panic, the golden-haired gorilla couldn't help showing a ferocious smile. The happy killing was about to begin. Chapter 79. In the forest, Yu Kai desperately stimulated the power of the talent rune to increase her speed to the extreme. She rushed towards the battlefield that Qinchuan had planned. On the way, Yu Kai could clearly perceive that the golden-haired gorilla was approaching her quickly. It was as if the scythe of the Grim Reaper had been placed on her neck, and could take her life at any time. The fear and panic of death turned into a strong will to survive, forcing Yu Kai to constantly tap into her own potential. She dodged the golden-haired gorilla's playful attacks again, and ran as fast as lightning in the forest. Although the process of escape was very dangerous, it also made Yu Kai clearly realize that Qinchuan was not lying. The strength of this golden-haired gorilla was indeed much weaker than yesterday. If it had been the golden-haired gorilla yesterday in its heyday, perhaps she would have already died. Soon, I'm almost there. Yu Kai looked ahead, her small face full of nervousness. As long as she could hold on for another 7, no, as long as she could hold on for another 5 seconds, she could arrive at the agreed place and lure the golden-haired gorilla into the predetermined battlefield. Whoosh! Yukai-er's figure was like lightning, and she quickly rushed to a small open space in front of her. At the same time, she looked behind her, expecting the golden-haired gorilla to chase her into the open space. However, to her surprise, the golden-haired gorilla stopped running in front of the open space. Seeing the golden-haired gorilla stop, Yukai-er could not help but be stunned. Qinchuan and the others hiding in the dark also suddenly changed their expressions. They looked nervously at the golden-haired gorilla that had stopped, and their hearts were beating like drums. Thump, thump, thump. The golden-haired gorilla was not an unintelligent, ominous beast. It was very smart, and its wisdom was not inferior to that of human beings. Therefore, when faced with some special situations, it would also think. In fact, it did not notice any traps in the open space in front of it, but it perceived that Qinchuan and the others were hiding in the open space, which made it instinctively feel a sense of danger. At the same time, it also realized one thing. It was very weak now, and those ant-like humans wanted to take advantage of its weakness to kill it. How? The golden-haired gorilla roared angrily, suddenly jumped up, and quickly rushed to the left side of the open space. Its target was Gao Zhenyu, who was hiding behind the tree. Although it did not feel that the arrangement of Qinchuan and the others could pose any threat to it, it still did not want to take the risk, so it decided to take the initiative and kill an ant first. Facing the golden-haired gorilla's attack, Gao Zhenyu's heart almost jumped out of his throat. Fortunately, he remembered Qinchuan's instructions, and quickly rushed to the open space. When the golden-haired gorilla saw Gao Zhenyu's, it did not continue to chase after him. Instead, it roared angrily. Gao Gao and the golden-haired gorilla. This golden-haired gorilla's strength is indeed much weaker. In the dense canopy, Wang Ying looked down and saw the scene of Gao Zhenyu dodging the golden-haired gorilla's attack. As Qinchuan said before, the golden-haired gorilla's strength was much weaker than yesterday. If it was yesterday, no matter how fast Gao Zhenyu's reaction was, he would definitely not be able to dodge the golden-haired gorilla's attack. In fact, other than the golden-haired gorilla's aura being much weaker, the color of its golden hair was also much dimmer at this time. All of this showed that the golden-haired gorilla was weak, and it also gave everyone more confidence in killing this golden-haired gorilla. How? The golden-haired gorilla waved its fists angrily and pounded its chest. The feeling of being toyed with by ants made it feel unprecedentedly angry. It must tear these ants to pieces and let them know how terrible the consequences of angering it were. In the roar, the golden-haired gorilla's body rushed out again. This time, its target was Guoxing. Even though Guoxing was prepared, he still could not react in time. The golden-haired gorilla slapped his shoulder fiercely. Suddenly, his entire shoulder collapsed, and his flesh was badly mutilated. Ah! Guoxing screamed and rushed to the open space. He tried his best to crawl to the other side of the open space. He knew that as long as he was in the open space, the golden-haired gorilla would not dare to chase after him. The golden-haired gorilla did not chase after Guoxing. It rushed out again. This time, its target was Wang Ying, who was hiding in the canopy. With the experience of Gao Zhenyu and Guoxing, Wang Ying jumped down from the canopy and landed straight on the open space. Then, he ran to the other side without looking back. Once again, the golden-haired gorilla missed. The furious golden-haired gorilla saw Wang Ying using the open space to avoid its pursuit. It was so angry that it wanted to break its snow-white teeth. It really wanted to rush over and tear Wang Ying to pieces, but its current state did not allow it to be too rash. Roar! The golden-haired gorilla roared again. This time, its target was naturally the last person, Qinchuan. Because he had to support Yukai, Qinchuan's hiding position was relatively far from the open space. After seeing that the golden-haired gorilla had locked onto him, Qinchuan immediately turned to Yukair beside him and said, "Go! Remember to protect me later." Yukair looked at Qinchuan worriedly, then immediately turned and ran away. When the golden-haired gorilla's angry roar sounded, she subconsciously looked back. Zalala! A dazzling lightning suddenly descended, turning everything in front of Yukair into a blue color. "Go to hell!" Accompanied by Qinchuan's roar, the golden-haired gorilla's extremely mournful scream sounded at the same time. The violent power of thunder surged wildly, drilling into the body of the golden-haired gorilla like a poisonous snake, crazily destroying the internal organs of the golden-haired gorilla. In just a few breaths, the golden-haired gorilla was charred black. Qinchuan's situation was not optimistic. When he stimulated the power of thunder to attack the golden-haired gorilla, the golden-haired gorilla's huge palm also slapped his chest. With just one slap, his chest caved in. The huge force caused him to fly back dozens of meters on the spot and hit a big tree fiercely. That miserable appearance made Qinchuan involuntarily think of the scene when he first entered the Cloud Dragon mountain range and faced the angry big black bear. Sure enough, challenging a higher-level opponent is not something a human can do. This was Qinchuan's last thought before he fainted. Chapter 80. Outside the Cloud Dragon mountain range, Yukair was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking worriedly at Qinchuan who was lying on the bed. Her eyes were red and swollen, obviously she had been crying. Seeing Yukair's appearance, the elegant young woman sitting on the chair couldn't help but sigh softly and said, "I have said many times, although he is seriously injured, I have given him the Luohong No. 2 capsule. In 2 hours, his injuries will be completely healed." Hearing the words of the elegant young woman, Yukair turned to look at her and asked pitifully, "In that case, why hasn't he woken up yet? Sister Azhu, are you really not lying to me?" Hearing this, Azhu smiled bitterly and said to Yukair, "Do you really think it is easy to kill a demon beast? Even if that demon beast is in a weak state, it is definitely not something that a little guy who has just entered the chi refining stage can easily defeat. When he killed that demonic beast, he overdrew the power of his innate rune, causing his body to be abnormally weak. That's why he's unconscious. Once his injuries are healed, he'll naturally wake up after resting for a while." Speaking of killing the demon beast, Azhu looked at the unconscious Qinchuan and couldn't help but praise him. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she really couldn't believe that there was a little guy who had just entered the chi refining stage who could kill a demon beast. It must be known that this was not something that could be done with courage alone. What a young hero! Azhu sighed and said, "You are lucky to have met him, otherwise, you might not have been able to walk out of this Cloud Dragon mountain range alive." On the second day after Yukair's group of 5 entered the Cloud Dragon mountain range, the 5 great families of Xiang City acted together and sent people into the Cloud Dragon mountain range to look for the whereabouts of Yukair's group, but after a few days they found nothing. Until today, when they heard the earth-shattering sound of thunder and the crazy howl of the golden-haired gorilla, they found Yukair's group and rescued them. At that time, the other families wanted to take the unconscious Qinchuan away, but they were stopped by Yukair. Before Qinchuan fell into a coma, he had asked her to protect him. Since she had promised, she would definitely do it. Hearing this, Yukair couldn't help but blush slightly. She didn't expect that there would be so many twists and turns in this experiential learning. I've already warned you that this Cloud Dragon mountain range is filled with danger and you shouldn't enter it easily. All of you think that you're invincible, but you don't listen to my advice. This time, you should know that I didn't lie to you." Azhu looked at Yukair with a smile and said, "However, it's not bad to experience such a thing once. At least I have never seen my family's Kai or act so tough for a boy before." In Azhu's impression, Yukair had always been a gentle, kind-hearted, and somewhat shy girl. But today, Yu Kai-er's unyielding attitude in the face of the elders of the other families really surprised Aju. She had watched Yu Kai-er grow up since she was a child. It was the first time that she had seen such a domineering appearance in Yu Kai. I promised to protect him. Yu Kai looked at Qin Chuan, who was lying on the bed again, and whispered, I can't break my promise. You want to protect him? Aju sighed and said, Li Mani is dead. Who do you think will be responsible for this? Yu Kai suddenly looked up at Aju and said, Mani died in the hands of the golden-haired gorilla. We've already understood what happened, but some things aren't as simple as you think. Aju looked at Yu Kai with a slightly complicated look and whispered, In fact, I hope that you can always be so kind and simple, but born in an aristocratic family, people with weak personalities usually don't have a good ending. Through this incident, I also hope that you can learn a lesson and recognize some facts. What do you want to do? Yu Kai subconsciously stood in front of Qin Chuan and looked at Aju with some horror in her eyes. You can rest assured that I won't do anything to him, but when he wakes up, we can no longer protect him. Aju said to Yu Kai with a very serious attitude, We don't need to go against the Li family for a stranger. This is not good for our Yu family. He is not an irrelevant person. He saved all of us. Yu Kai said to Aju emotionally, We have agreed before that we will protect Qin Chuan together. Oh, they promised to protect Qin Chuan, but if the elders in their family don't come forward, what do you think they can do to protect Qin Chuan? Do they rely on their mouths? Aju sneered and said, We will remember the kindness of saving our lives. We will definitely give him a generous reward, but this is another matter. We can't intervene in the matter between him and the Li family. No. Yu Kai shook her head. She would never agree to hand over Qin Chuan. Seeing Yu Kai-er's firm attitude, Aju also knew that the test was almost done, so she asked Yu Kai-er, Tell me the truth, do you like this little guy? Yu Kai-er's face suddenly turned red like a ripe tomato. She lowered her head and refused to answer. Seeing her shy appearance, Aju, as an experienced person, understood. It's not impossible to protect him, but our Yu family needs an excuse to do so. I think that the future son-in-law of our Yu family is a very good excuse. Aju looked at Yu Kai with a slightly subtle look and said, I don't know if you are willing or not. Outside the tent, Aju dialed the family head's phone and said, Kai agreed. She is willing to announce that Qin Chuan is her fiancé. Things are well done. A somewhat low voice came from the other side of the phone. If the Li family has to go against our future son-in-law, then we have no reason to stand idly by. Aju was somewhat puzzled and asked, In order to win over such a little guy, is it really appropriate to marry Kai? Although this matter was facilitated by her, she really did not understand why the family head issued such an order. Marry? I don't think so. The person on the other side of the phone laughed. His name is Qin Chuan. He has activated the talent rune and has the thunder attribute. Don't you think this information is a bit familiar? What method do you think he used to defeat that demon beast? Aju whispered these keywords softly. As if thinking of something, her eyes suddenly lit up and she exclaimed, It's him! The Qin Chuan who shocked the world with the Thunder Talisman array in the Hidden Dragon Arena? He must have used the Thunder Talisman array to kill the demon beast. Now, do you still think this marriage is inappropriate? Chapter 81. Oh, this is... Qin Chuan slowly opened his eyes, and looked at the surroundings with a slightly confused look. This gorgeous tent made Qin Chuan wonder if he was still in the Cloud Dragon mountain range. He tried to sit up, but his head hurt so much that he couldn't help but cry out in pain. Qin Chuan? You're awake. Yu Kai, who was sleeping soundly beside the bed, heard the noise made by Qin Chuan and immediately woke up. She looked at Qin Chuan with surprise and said, Don't move, I'll let the doctor check your body. After saying that, Yu Kai got up and ran out of the tent, shouting for the doctor. Seeing Yu Kai-er's figure, Qin Chuan had a general understanding of his situation. The appearance of this tent should be related to the several aristocratic families in Xiang City. It seemed that a lot of things had happened while he was in a coma. Just as Qin Chuan was thinking about this, Yu Kai-er came back with the doctor. The doctor used a scanner to do a comprehensive examination for Qin Chuan, and then said to Yu Kai-er, "Miss, young Master Qin doesn't have any serious problems. It's just that he overdrew the power of his talent Rune and the mental strength of his brain, so his body is still very weak. He just needs to rest for a while. If he wants to recover quickly, he can take some medicine." "Thank you, doctor," Qin Chuan said to the doctor with a slightly hoarse voice. "I know my situation, I'm sorry to trouble you." In order to kill that demonic beast, although Qin Chuan set up a thunder-summoning talisman array, the weather was clear at that time, and there was no thunder to be attracted. The thunder power that Qin Chuan used at that time came from the remaining 3 thunderstones and his talent Rune. In order to kill in one blow, Qin Chuan didn't dare to hold back, which led to the overdraft of his power, leaving behind this headache. "You're welcome. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first." The doctor smiled, packed up his toolbox and left the tent, leaving the space for Qin Chuan and Yu Kai-er. After the doctor left, Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai-er, who was sitting on the bed with a shy face, and said, "What are you shy about?" Yu Kai-er shook her head in a panic and said incoherently, "No, I didn't." "Forget it, tell me what happened after I was in a coma." Qin Chuan shook his head. It didn't matter why Yu Kai-er was shy for the time being. What was important, he needed to understand the current situation and grasp the key information, so that he could make the corresponding arrangements for the next step. After you fainted, the power of thunder lost control and began to spread in all directions. We were also affected and were all paralyzed and unable to move. At this time, the family members who had entered the Cloud Dragon mountain range to look for us heard the commotion and rushed over to save us. Later, I brought you to our Yu family's camp. That's about it. Yu Kai-er simply told what happened when Qin Chuan was in a coma. She didn't leave out too much, but Qin Chuan instinctively felt that something was wrong. "No, you should be hiding some information." Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai-er deeply and said, "Li Mani is dead. Did the Li family accept this result so easily and remain indifferent to her death? The Li family doesn't dare to go too far with you, the children of aristocratic families, but they shouldn't let a poor boy like me off so easily." Although Qin Chuan didn't come from an aristocratic family, he knew the style of aristocratic families very well. These people might be polite to other aristocratic families, but they would be arrogant and domineering to ordinary people. He didn't believe that a family that could cultivate an arrogant child like Li Mani would let him off so easily. Although Li Mani's death was purely her own fault, an aristocratic family that had nowhere to vent their anger casually implicated an ordinary person in order to show that the dignity of an aristocratic family couldn't be offended. Wasn't this a very normal operation? Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Yu Kai-er's face slightly changed, and then she said to Qin Chuan with a guilty conscience, "In fact, the Li family did want to make trouble for you, but you are my savior, so this time our Yu family blocked it for you. So you don't have to worry about whether the Li family will make trouble for you." "I can accept your explanation, but your face looks a little strange." Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai-er with a puzzled look. He always felt that Yu Kai-er was hiding something from him, but she obviously didn't want to say it. "Well, you have a good rest. I will come to see you tomorrow morning." Yu Kai-er left such a sentence and hurriedly ran out of the tent. Looking at Yu Kai-er's leaving figure, Qin Chuan became more and more suspicious. However, the current situation didn't allow him to go out to investigate, so he could only recuperate first. The night passed quickly. After a whole night of recuperation, coupled with the advanced nutrition and healing potions provided by the Yu family for free, Qin Chuan's body had almost recovered. Although his head still hurt from time to time, At least he could get out of bed and walk around. Qin Chuan changed into the new clothes prepared for him by the maid. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Aristocratic families were indeed aristocratic families. They even had to bring such luxurious mobile tents and maids to search for people in the mountains. No one would doubt that they were here for an excursion. Qin Chuan walked out of the tent and glanced at the cooks and waiters who were busy preparing breakfast in the camp. Then he looked at a few people who were chatting together. At this time, those people also stopped talking and looked at Qin Chuan. They pointed at Qin Chuan and began to whisper again. Qin Chuan, why are you up? Yu Kai came out of a tent and saw Qin Chuan standing in the camp. She couldn't help but ask with concern, how is your body? I am very good. Qin Chuan looked calmly at a Zhu who was standing beside Yu Kai and asked, this is? Let me introduce you, this is my sister, her name is a Zhu. Yu Kai took a Zhu's arm and said to Qin Chuan, you can call her sister a Zhu with me. A Zhu looked at Qin Chuan with a smile and said, young hero, you are finally awake? Our Kai has been worried about you all day. Sister, a Zhu. Yu Kai glared at a Zhu and said, don't talk nonsense. Thank you, Kai, for your concern, and thank you, sister, a Zhu, for your care. Qin Chuan slightly pursed his lips and said, although I saved Kai, you also saved me, so now we don't owe each other anything. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave first. Chapter 82. You are leaving? But where are you going? Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. Hearing that Qin Chuan was about to leave, Yu Kai immediately became anxious. She quickly stepped forward and pulled Qin Chuan's sleeve, unwilling to let Qin Chuan leave. Qin Chuan smiled and said to Yu Kai, the college entrance examination is coming soon. I should go home to see my friends and get together with them. If there is a chance in the future, we should be able to meet again. Qin Chuan's explanation was reasonable, and no one could find any reason to refute it. But, Yu Kai said 2 buts in a row, but she couldn't find any reason to persuade Qin Chuan to stay. Qin Chuan, if you want to leave now, I have no reason to force you to stay. But you have to know that once you leave this camp, the Li family may not let you go. A Zhu looked at Qin Chuan deeply and said, if you want to go home, we can arrange an intercity train to send you back. This way, not only is it safe and fast, but it can also save you enough time to recuperate. What do you think? I don't deserve it. Qin Chuan looked at a Zhu seriously and said, your Yu family has already paid off what you owe me. I don't want to owe you any favors. There were some words that Qin Chuan still had to make clear, because he didn't want to have any involvement with the aristocratic families. He had a friendship with Yu Kai, but it didn't mean that he had to be friends with the Yu family. What do you mean by aren't we a family? While speaking, a Zhu looked at the blushing Yu Kai with a strange look. Could it be that this little girl didn't explain to Qin Chuan yesterday? A family? Qin Chuan was a little confused. How did they become a family? Seeing the confused look on Qin Chuan's face, a Zhu understood that Yu Kai didn't explain to Qin Chuan yesterday. Otherwise, Qin Chuan wouldn't be so anxious to draw a line with the Yu family today. Qin Chuan, I know that you have experienced some things, so you hate the aristocratic families from the bottom of your heart. But there are countless aristocratic families in this world, and not every aristocratic family's style of conduct is annoying. A Zhu patiently explained to Qin Chuan. This time, in order to repay you for saving Kai-er's life, we blocked the anger of the Li family for you. Do you know what price we paid for this? Qin Chuan frowned slightly and said, I will definitely repay you in the future. Repay? How are you going to repay Kai-er's reputation? A Zhu subtly looked at Qin Chuan and said, Can you repay a girl's? Kai-er's reputation? Qin Chuan was a little stunned. He glanced at Yu Kai, who was standing beside him with her head bowed. A big question mark appeared in his head. What the hell is going on? In order to protect you, we have to announce that you are Kai-er's fiancé. In this way, you are a member of our Yu family. Naturally, the Li family won't dare to do anything excessive to you. Zhu calmly explained to Qinchuan. This news has already spread throughout the entire Xiang city. Everyone knows that you are Kai Er's fiancé. If you leave quietly, how will Kai Er go out to meet people in the future? Qinchuan was a little dizzy. He was unconscious for half a day, and suddenly he became Yu Kai Er's fiancé? Sister Zhu, how about let him go? Yu Kai Er raised her head and looked at Zhu. Her eyes were slightly red and filled with tears. She looked really pitiful and sad. Kai Er, if he leaves, what will you do? Zhu looked at Yu Kai Er with some distress. She couldn't bear to see Yu Kai Er cry. I'm sorry, I didn't know that things would turn out like this. Qinchuan looked at Yu Kai Er with a very complicated expression. It was impossible to say that a girl's reputation was not important, but it was too much to ask him to bear this responsibility. Now that you know, what are you going to do? Zhu turned to look at Qinchuan, waiting for Qinchuan's answer. If Qinchuan dared to say something like explaining to the outside world, she would kill this bastard. I want to know, is this really just an excuse for you to protect me, or? Qinchuan looked at Zhu deeply and said, Are you going to make this a real show? Zhu sneered when she heard the words. What, do you think that Kai Er is not worthy of you? I don't mean that. Qinchuan shook his head. Kai Er's reputation is important, but my reputation is not necessarily important. After this storm is over, you can find a reason at any time, such as I cheated, or that a long-distance relationship is too hard, and then cancel this engagement. In short, Qinchuan did not want to make this a real show. Even if there was a relationship between him and Yu Kai Er, it was definitely friendship, not love. Qinchuan never believed in love at first sight. Long-distance relationship is too hard? What kind of reason is this? Zhu looked at Qinchuan with extremely angry eyes and said angrily, You don't like Kai Er? Do you really think that Kai Er will only marry you? You misunderstood. Qinchuan said with a headache, I just don't want to delay Kai Er. He was now patiently explaining to Zhu, on the one hand, because the Yu family did help him block the anger of the Li family, and on the other hand, because he didn't want to hurt Yu Kai. Otherwise, with Qinchuan's character, he would have already left. Qinchuan. Yu Kai Er looked at Qinchuan with some grievances and said, Is Kai Er not good enough? In the face of Yu Kai Er's inquiry, Qinchuan said helplessly, Kai Er, I am wholeheartedly focused on cultivation, and have no interest in the love between men and women. Love without a material basis was a plate of loose sand, and love without a foundation of strength was also a plate of loose sand. Today, Qinchuan only wanted to become stronger, and really had no interest in love. Qinchuan's explanation sounded like an excuse to Yu Kai. Thinking of Qinchuan once said in the tree hole that he didn't like her, and didn't want her to marry him, Yu Kai felt that her heart was about to break. Where is Qinchuan? Tell him to come out. At this moment, a very arrogant shout came from outside the camp, and then a group of people forced their way into the camp. Seeing the arrival of these people, Zhu's face suddenly became cold, and she said angrily, Li Sun, you are too much. This is our Yu family's camp. Do you think it is a market where you can enter and leave at will? Yu Zhu, as long as you are willing to hand over Qinchuan, our Li family will immediately apologize to you, and compensate you 10 times the damage. What do you think? After that, the tall and thin Li Sun looked at the people in the camp and said coldly, Where is that Qinchuan who should be cut into pieces? Chapter 83. Looking at Li Sun, who had brought people into the camp, Qinchuan looked at Zhu with a profound look. Is this what you meant when you said that the Li family did not dare to do anything to me? Facing Qinchuan's gaze, Zhu was extremely ashamed and angry. She secretly hated that the Li family had come at the wrong time. Now that Qinchuan was unwilling to agree to the marriage between him and Yu Kai, should she protect Qinchuan or let the Li family take away Qinchuan? But if the Li family really took away Qinchuan today, then the face of the Yu family would be trampled under the feet of the Li family. In the future, how would the people of the Yu family go out to meet people? While Zhu was thinking about these things, Qinchuan had already stepped forward and calmly stood in front of Li Sun. I am Qinchuan. The people of the Li family had already come to the door. Qinchuan also had no way to be a coward and pretend that nothing had happened. Li Sun looked at Qinchuan, who stood out. His eyes suddenly became gloomy, and coldly said, "You are the Qinchuan who killed Manny? Li Manny's death is her own fault. If someone has to bear the responsibility, then it should be Guoxing who pushed Li Manny. I really don't understand why you are looking for me." Qinchuan looked at Li Sun calmly and said, "If the reason is because I am a civilian who is easy to bully, then I can reluctantly accept it." If you didn't insist on taking the Thunder Spirit Stone, how could Manny be in danger alone? Li Sun looked at Qinchuan with cold eyes. So many people were chased by evil beasts, why didn't you die? But Manny? If I die, then everyone else will die. Qinchuan faintly responded. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Now that you have found me, but you are not in a hurry to take action. It seems that you are not ready to kill me. Then you should have other plans. Let me think. Qinchuan pondered deeply for a moment, and then he laughed coldly and said, Li Manny can be considered to be a genius of your Li clan. Now that she's dead, your Li clan has lost a genius. You wouldn't be thinking of capturing me back to your Li clan and forcing me to work for your Li clan, right? When Qinchuan's voice fell, the expression on Li Sun's face became a little surprised. He did not expect that Qinchuan actually guessed the truth of the matter. Qinchuan said, Li Sun to work for you, Qinchuan to work for the Li family to work. If the Yu family could find out Qinchuan's true identity, the Li family could naturally do the same. Although Li Manny was dead, if they could get a genius who was 10 times stronger than Li Manny to work for the Li family, such a loss was not unacceptable. This was the ruthlessness of the aristocratic families. In their eyes, only benefits were the most important. In fact, the Yu family announced that Qinchuan was Yu Kai-er's fiancé, which was another way to recruit Qinchuan. Compared to the Li family, the Yu family did it more secretly. It was precisely because of this that Qinchuan wanted to explain the matter clearly. Manny can't die in vain. Li Sun took a deep look at Qinchuan and said, We have already sent people to summon Manny's soul. If you don't want to die, you'd better make a choice now. With Li Manny's arrogant and paranoid character, she would not let go of Qinchuan and Guoxing even if she became a ghost. Guoxing had the protection of the Guo family. At worst, he could compensate the Li family with some money. The Li family would not fall out with the Guo family because of a dead person. As for Qinchuan, he had no one to rely on, so he was at the mercy of the Li family. So what if Li Manny was a genius? A dead genius was just a dead person. Don't go too far. A delicate figure stepped forward and stood in front of Qinchuan. She said angrily to Li Sun, Don't you think you can force Qinchuan to do something he doesn't want to do? Qinchuan looked at Yu Kai in surprise. He did not expect that after he had clearly refused, Yu Kai was still willing to stand in front of him and fight against the Li family for him. Zhu, who was still thinking about the pros and cons, saw that Yu Kai had already made a decision. She could not help but sigh helplessly. She was afraid that today's matter would be difficult to resolve. Is this how the Yu family teaches their children to talk to their elders? Li Sun stared at Zhu with extremely sharp eyes. If the Yu family's discipline is not strict enough, the Li family is not afraid of trouble. We are willing to discipline them on your behalf. Li Sun, you don't have to be so sarcastic here. If the Li family's discipline was good, Li Manny would not have killed herself, and you would not have broken into our Yu family's camp. Zhu stepped forward and said coldly, "Every one of the Yu family, listen to my order. If anyone dares to run amok in our Yu family's camp, immediately capture them. If they dare to resist, kill them." With Zhu's order, the Yu family's people in the camp immediately acted and surrounded the Li family's people. Some of them even pulled out their alloy weapons, as if they were ready to fight at any time. Seeing this scene, Li Sun's face could not help but change slightly. This time, he did not bring many people. If they really fought, they would suffer a big loss. If they really died here, it would be too much of a loss. "Yu Zhuer, do you really want to go to war with our Li family?" Li Sun looked at Zhu and said, "If you do this, aren't you afraid that your Yu family's master will blame you?" "You are not afraid of your Li family's master blaming you. Why should I be afraid?" Zhu sneered. "If you really have the guts, then try to move now and see if I really dare to kill you." While speaking, Zhu had pulled out a strangely shaped silver-white pistol from her waist and aimed the muzzle at Li Sun's forehead. The muzzle of the gun gradually lit up with a scarlet light. As long as Zhu pulled the trigger, it would immediately shoot out a laser and kill Li Sun. "Good, good, good." Li Sun was so angry that his whole body was trembling. He pointed at Zhu and said "good" 3 times. Then he glared at Qin Chuan and said, "I hope you can live under the protection of the Yu family for the rest of your life. Otherwise, my Li family will not forgive you." In the face of Li Sun's threat, Qin Chuan was extraordinarily calm. He glanced at Yu Kai'er, who was in front of him, and said softly, "When the doctor checked my body yesterday, he said that my stomach is not very good." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Yu Kai'er could not help but look back at Qin Chuan with a puzzled expression. She was also present when the doctor checked Qin Chuan's body yesterday. Did the doctor say that Qin Chuan's stomach was not very good? "So, the doctor advised me to live off a woman in the future." When Yu Kai'er heard Qin Chuan's last sentence, she finally understood the meaning of Qin Chuan. Her face could not help but blush slightly. Looking at Qin Chuan, her eyes became a little happy and shy. Did Qin Chuan mean that he agreed? Chapter 84. No matter how angry Li Sun was, he didn't dare to really turn against Yu family, so after leaving some harsh words, he left with his people. After the people of Li family left, Zhu looked at Qin Chuan and Yu Kai'er, who were standing together, sighed and said, "Come with me." Qin Chuan and Yu Kai'er followed Zhu into the tent. Zhu took out a sparkling blue crystal ball and put it on the table, isolating the sound inside and outside the tent. Then she looked at Qin Chuan and asked, "What do you mean now?" Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kai'er, who was standing next to him, then looked at Zhu and said in a very serious tone, "To tell you the truth, I don't have any feelings for Kai. If there must be feelings, then it must be friendship, not love." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Yu Kai'er couldn't help but lower her head. It seemed that she didn't want others to see the change of expression on her face. Zhu looked at Qin Chuan with a cold face and said, "What do you mean by your last words?" "First of all, I am very grateful to your Yu family for protecting me from the Li family. Whether it is because of your family's face or because of my relationship with Kai'er, in short, you did help me. I have to admit that I now owe your Yu family a favor." Qin Chuan had always been a person who clearly distinguished between gratitude and grudges. Since Yu family helped him, then he owed Yu family. He couldn't go against his conscience and pretend that nothing happened. From the attitude of Li family to your Yu family, I think that my identity should have been exposed. In fact, I don't have any identity, I'm just an ordinary person with some talent. Qin Chuan glanced at Yu Kai'er with a complicated look in his eyes and said, "Actually, I hope that the relationship between Kai'er and I can be more pure, and that there shouldn't be anything special in it. I can promise your Yu family that in the future, I can do one thing for your Yu family within the scope of my ability. This promise will always be valid." Qin Chuan made this promise. It was a kind of repayment for Yu family's kindness. As for what he owed Yu Kai, it was not so easy to calculate. You have said so much, but you haven't said how to deal with the relationship between you and Kai. Zhu didn't take Qinchuan's promise to heart. It was true that Qinchuan was very talented and had potential, but before he really grew up, his promise was worthless. I think the reason why Kai is willing to announce that I am her fiancé is because she has some special feelings for me. Qinchuan pursed his lips and said softly, "In fact, Kai and I have only known each other for 2 days. I don't think that I have such great charm that I can make Kai fall in love with me in just 2 days. So, instead of saying that Kai loves me, it's better to say that I am the only person she can rely on in those 2 days. I made her rely on me and trust me from the bottom of her heart." In the case of a blank emotional world, Kai mistakenly regarded this reliance and trust as her love for me. I think that if I let Kai return to her normal life, maybe it won't take long for Kai to understand that she doesn't like me. In that case, Kai shouldn't agree to continue to have that kind of relationship with me. Hearing Qinchuan's long speech, Zhu couldn't help but look at Yu Kai with a puzzled look. In fact, she also felt that Yu Kai's feelings for Qinchuan were a bit strange. In just 2 days, it shouldn't be enough for Yu Kai to completely fall in love with Qinchuan. Even if there were some feelings, it should be very hazy. The reason why Yu Kai was willing to announce that Qinchuan was her fiancé was probably to protect Qinchuan. There was not much love between a man and a woman. Kai, what do you think? Zhu was somewhat helpless. The patriarch's order was to let her match Qinchuan and Yu Kai, but now that Qinchuan didn't want to, she didn't want to wrong Kai. She was afraid that this matter would be ruined. "Sister Zhu, you go out first. I have something to say to Qinchuan alone." Yu Kai still bowed her head, refusing to let others see her face. Zhu took a deep look at Qinchuan and said hatefully, "If you dare to bully Kai, you will die." After leaving this sentence, Zhu turned and walked out of the tent. It was more appropriate to let the parties involved solve the matter between a man and a woman. After Zhu left, Qinchuan looked at Yu Kai with complicated eyes and said, "I'm really sorry. This matter is not your fault." Yu Kai slowly raised her head and looked at Qinchuan with moist eyes and said, "We made such a decision when you were in a coma. It was a bit disrespectful to you. It's normal that you don't want to. Moreover, you also said that you don't like me and don't want me to devote myself to you. You are so good, I really don't deserve you." Qinchuan hurriedly explained, "No. I said that as a joke. How can you not deserve me? It's me who doesn't deserve you." "Is what you said true?" Yu Kai looked at Qinchuan with some expectation. "It's true," Qinchuan said with a serious face. "I don't deserve you. But I think what you said is wrong. I don't just rely on and trust you. I really like you." Yu Kai blinked and said to Qinchuan very seriously, "Although I have never been in love, I still have some understanding of what it feels like to like someone. However, I know that you don't like me now, but it doesn't mean that you won't like me in the future. Why don't we make an agreement?" "What agreement?" Qinchuan's mind was already in a mess at this time. He really didn't know how to solve the matter perfectly on the premise of not hurting Yu Kai. "You said that you are focused on cultivation and have no interest in love. I can understand this. After all, we haven't graduated from high school, and there are at least 3 years of college life. This is a very important period in our lives, and we really shouldn't be bothered by other things. So, let's make an agreement of 3 years. In these 3 years we will still be friends. If after 3 years you still don't like me, or I don't like you, then our relationship will be friends, pure friends." Qinchuan looked at Yu Kai with a strange look and asked, "Then, if you still, I'm not being narcissistic, I'm just assuming if you still like me?" Yu Kai slightly raised the corner of her mouth and said coquettishly, "Then, please give me a chance to pursue you for the sake of friends." Chapter 85. Zhu didn't know what Qin Chuan and Yu Kai talked about in private, but she could see that after the chat, Qin Chuan was relieved and Yu Kai was also happy. What's the result? Zhu glanced at Qin Chuan and then looked at Yu Kai. Facing Zhu's inquiry, Yu Kai's face turned slightly red and replied, Qin Chuan is still my fiancé, but this relationship should not be made public for the time being. In addition, we will not get married now. At least, we have to wait until we graduate from college to determine whether this relationship should continue. Hearing Yu Kai's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but look at Zhu with a strange gaze. Previously, Zhu had said that the relationship between him and Yu Kai had already been made known to everyone in Xiang City. Now it seemed that it was purely a lie. This also explained why the Li family would so arrogantly come knocking on their door. Facing Qin Chuan's deep eyes, Zhu looked at Yu Kai with some helplessness. Yu Kai's words made it clear that she was telling Qin Chuan that they had deceived him before. However, it seemed that Qin Chuan didn't want to hold on to this matter, which made her feel relieved. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing. I probably understand what you mean. Whether it is to cancel the engagement or to fulfill the engagement, you have to wait until 3 years to make a decision, right? For this result, Zhu could also accept it. She looked at Yu Kai with some pity and said, You are the princess of our Yu family. Don't wrong yourself. And you? Zhu stared fiercely at Qin Chuan and said, In these 3 years you'd better practice wholeheartedly. If you dare to flirt outside, I will kill you. I will. Qin Chuan smiled and didn't take Zhu's threat too seriously. After solving a series of things, Yu family was ready to return to Xiang City. Qin Chuan naturally had to go with them. Before leaving, several elders of other families wanted to see Qin Chuan, saying that they wanted to thank Qin Chuan, but they were all rejected by Zhu. The reason was that Qin Chuan was scared by the people of Li family and was sick. As for whether this explanation would make other families look down on Qin Chuan, Zhu didn't care. Qin Chuan stood on the hillside and looked at the large luxurious airship parked at the foot of the mountain. He couldn't help but sigh. Aristocratic families were really worthy of being called an aristocratic family. The journey from Xiang City to Cloud Dragon Mountain Range was only a few hundred kilometers, but it was actually worth it for them to use an airship. However, thinking of those luxurious and exquisite tents, as well as a large number of maids and attendants, Qin Chuan felt relieved. If there was no airship, it would really be difficult to bring so many people and things. Your Yu family should be very strong. Qin Chuan glanced at Yu Kai standing beside him and asked, Generally, rich people can't buy such an airship. Even the most basic civilian airship was not something that could be bought with money. To really own an airship, one must have a noble identity and powerful strength. Since Yu family could own such a large and luxurious airship, their strength was obviously not ordinary. It must be known that the airships of the other families were just ordinary civilian airships, which were nothing compared to the large and luxurious airship of Yu family. I don't know. This airship was bought by my grandfather. Yu Kai looked confused. She didn't know much about this. Let's go. Take me to see it. I have never taken an airship before. Qin Chuan grinned and asked Yu Kai, Tell me, how can I pretend that I often take airships? Yu Kai pursed her lips and smiled. You don't have to pretend. This feeling can't be fake. Qin Chuan. Although Qin Chuan was already mentally prepared, he was still surprised by the luxurious interior design of the airship. In the lounge of the airship, Qin Chuan was like a curious baby, looking left and right, full of curiosity about everything. Yu Kai followed Qin Chuan and patiently introduced the functions of some equipment to Qin Chuan. She didn't expect that the mature and steady Qin Chuan in the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range would have such a cute side. Yes, in Yu Kai's eyes, Qin Chuan, who acted like a country bumpkin entering a city, was really cute. When I was outside, I thought that such an airship was worth about a few $100 million, but now it seems that I was really ignorant. This airship is definitely worth more than $2 billion. Qin Chuan was jealous. $2 billion? How many high-level cultivation resources could he buy with that? Your estimation is right. This airship is a luxury premium version of the Meteor series, and its price is $2.4 billion. Aju, who had changed into a casual outfit, slowly walked over with a glass of red wine and stood beside Yu Kai. She looked at Qin Chuan with a smile and said, "It seems that you don't have a special understanding of the strength of our Yu family." "Indeed." Qin Chuan nodded frankly. "I am just a poor boy who hasn't seen much of the world." The most valuable thing Qin Chuan had ever come into contact with was probably Zhou Lin's 9th Skywalker shuttle, but although that shuttle was a limited edition, its value was about 200 million. Compared with this airship, it was really nothing. Thinking of Zhou Lin, Qin Chuan felt that it was necessary to contact Zhou Lin and tell her the good news that he had successfully advanced to the qi refining stage. He didn't know if Zhou Lin had successfully advanced to the foundation establishment stage during the few months he was in the Cloud Dragon mountain range. "You are the most honest young man I have ever seen." Aju smiled slightly and said, "Few boys don't care about their image and casually admit their shortcomings. I don't think this is a shortcoming. I think it's very cute." Yu Kai looked innocent. She felt that Qin Chuan was very real. He was much better than those people who said they were powerful, but in fact, they didn't have the slightest ability. Aju looked at Yu Kai with a dumbfounded expression. She actually used cute to describe Qin Chuan? "By the way, this is yours." Aju suddenly took out a yellow cobblestone-sized stone and handed it to Qin Chuan and said, "This is the demon core of that demon beast. You killed it, this thing belongs to you." Looking at the demon core handed over by Aju, Qin Chuan was very surprised. He had only heard of the existence of demon cores, but it was the first time he had seen the real thing. "Thank you." Qin Chuan didn't argue and directly reached out and took the demon core. He was very short of money. This demon core should be very good to fill his wallet. This demon core is of the earth attribute. It should be able to sell for a good price. If you trust our Yu family, you can take it to the auction. Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment. Auction? Chapter 86. Qin Chuan had never participated in an auction before, and this was the first time he had heard about it. This made Qin Chuan, who was curious about everything new, couldn't help but ask, "Is there an auction in Xiang City?" "Of course." Aju smiled and said, "Xiang City holds a small auction every month, and a large auction every half a year. The day after tomorrow is the day of the large auction. If you take this demon core to the auction, you should be able to get a good price." Qin Chuan said with some emotion, "Xiang City is indeed Xiang City. Although the state capital of Qing was also an independent city, it was far inferior to Xiang City. The area of Xiang City was at least 5 times that of the state capital of Qing, and the population was more than 10 times that of the state capital of Qing. Whether it was technological or economic conditions, the state capital of Qing couldn't be compared to Xiang City. At least, Qin Chuan had never heard of any auction in the state capital of Qing. "Our Yu family has a special box at the auction. If you want to see the auction, you can come with us." Aju could see that Qin Chuan was very curious about the auction, so she didn't wait for Qin Chuan to mention it and took the initiative to invite him. Hearing Aju's invitation to participate in the auction, Qin Chuan was immediately very happy and said to Aju, "Thank you very much." For such a grand event like the auction, Qin Chuan didn't want to miss it. Even if he couldn't afford to buy anything, it was still very good to broaden his horizons. "You're welcome. If you take this demon core to the auction, you can also get a seat, but it won't be a box." Aju felt that it was necessary to explain these small things to Qin Chuan. If Qin Chuan misunderstood that she was deliberately doing him a favor, then it wouldn't be good. I'll have to trouble Sister Azhu about the auction. Qin Chuan handed the demon core to Azhu and said, I'll have to trouble you for a while. Originally, Qin Chuan had planned to leave after visiting the Yu clan, but now it seemed that he would have to stay for a few more days. After Azhu left, Yu Kai looked at Qin Chuan, who was sitting on the sofa with a fascinated look on his face. She asked curiously, What's so good about the auction? Why are you so excited? Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment when he heard this. Then, he smiled bitterly and said, For you, the auction is indeed meaningless. But for me, it's a rare opportunity to broaden my horizons. After all, I've never experienced such an occasion before. It's inevitable that I'm a little excited. Qin Chuan didn't try to hide it. He wasn't the kind of person who cared so much about his reputation. If he hadn't seen it before, then he hadn't seen it before. There was nothing to hide. I didn't mean to mock you. Yu Kai was worried that Qin Chuan would misunderstand, so she quickly explained, I just think that it's silly for a group of people to bid for the same thing at the auction. If you want something, you can just spend money to buy it. Why do you have to compete with others? Qin Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was probably the way a rich girl thought about things. Sure enough, it was different from ordinary people. Qin Chuan's optical computer had been destroyed during the battle with the demon beast. Fortunately, his optical computer chip was saved, and he could continue to plug in a new optical computer. He borrowed a new optical computer from Yu Kai and plugged in the chip. In an instant, hundreds of messages poured into his mailbox. The optical computer beeped non-stop. Most of these messages were from Wang Bo, some from Lu Zi, and only one from Zhou Lin. Seeing these messages, Qin Chuan first opened Zhou Lin's message. There was only one simple sentence inside. Foundation establishment has been completed. Seeing this sentence, Qin Chuan couldn't help but smile. He glanced at the time on the message. This message was sent to him by Zhou Lin 2 months ago. In other words, Zhou Lin had already stepped into the foundation establishment stage for 2 months. As expected of senior sister, her progress is really fast. Qin Chuan said with some emotion, I don't know when I can step into the foundation establishment stage. Thinking so, Qin Chuan operated the optical computer to send a video call request to Zhou Lin. After waiting for about 3 seconds, the video call was connected. The optical computer flashed, and Zhou Lin's charming and beautiful face appeared in front of Qin Chuan. Hello, congratulations on successfully advancing to the foundation establishment stage, senior sister. Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin with a smile and said, My congratulations may be a little late, but I'm absolutely sincere. Since you have already walked out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain, you must have advanced to the Qi refining stage. Zhou Lin knew that Qin Chuan had entered the Cloud Dragon Mountain range to train. Since Qin Chuan contacted her at this time, it meant that Qin Chuan had already walked out of the Cloud Dragon Mountain range. This also meant that Qin Chuan had successfully advanced to the Qi refining stage and ended his training. This training was really scary but not dangerous. Qin Chuan smiled and said with emotion, I actually killed a demonic beast. Can you believe it? Demonic beast? Are you injured? Zhou Lin suddenly frowned and asked with concern, Are your injuries serious? I'm fine, I've already recovered. Qin Chuan chuckled. Seeing that Zhou Lin didn't doubt whether he had really killed a demonic beast, but was instead concerned about his physical condition, Qin Chuan felt very warm in his heart. By the way, there's something I want to tell you. The expression on Zhou Lin's face suddenly became serious. She said to Qin Chuan in a very serious voice, Is there anyone around you? Qin Chuan heard this and looked around, then said to Zhou Lin, There's no one. What's wrong? After I returned to the school, I've been looking up information, trying to figure out what's going on with your brain. Combining the literature records and the explanations of the mentors, I finally came to a conclusion. Zhou Lin looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "The changes in your brain are not abnormal. It's very likely that it's a manifestation of the perfect state." Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment and said with some astonishment, "You mean I've already touched the perfect state?" "That's right." Zhou Lin nodded solemnly and said, "In the official history, there are very few records about the perfect state. However, I found a rumor in the unofficial history. 3,000 years ago, the almighty cultivator Li Hua the Venerable was once burned by a raging fire during a cultivation in the body-tempering stage. And this Li Hua the Venerable was the person who recently touched the perfect state in the body-tempering stage. And his domain was the domain of fire. When you were enveloped by the power of thunder, it was very similar to how this Li Hua the Venerable was burned by a raging fire. Therefore, I suspect that this special situation should be a symbol of touching the perfect state." Hearing Zhou Lin's words, Qin Chuan felt that his brain wasn't enough. He originally didn't have any hope for the perfect state, but now Zhou Lin suddenly told him that he had touched the perfect state long ago, but he just didn't know it. This was too fantastical. Chapter 87. Senior Sister, could you have made a mistake? Qin Chuan scratched his head and said, "If that's really the symbol of reaching the perfect state, then why don't I feel any changes at all?" Other than the instantaneous burst of lightning energy, Qin Chuan did not feel any special changes in his body. If this was really the perfect state, then it was a little too ordinary. You don't know the true face of Mount Lu because you're in this mountain. You can't feel the benefits of developing your brain to the perfect state because you're already used to this feeling. Without a comparison, of course you won't be able to realize the power of the perfect state. Zhou Lin pursed her lips and said to Qin Chuan, "According to my calculations, whether it's in terms of spiritual power or perception, you should be far superior to people of the same level." Hearing Zhou Lin's words, Qin Chuan recalled that when he was surrounded by the green wolves, the reason why he was able to kill half of them in an instant was because of his astonishing perception. He could predict the trajectory of the green wolves' attacks in advance and make the correct response. Later on, when he was at the rocky mound, only he could sense the existence of the thunder beast hidden deep in the cave. Later on, when he did not have a talisman pen to use, Qin Chuan forcefully used his spiritual power as a pen to inscribe a talisman array. It was just an experiment, but in the end it was unexpectedly successful. At that time, he did not have time to think about it. Now that he thought about it, if his spiritual power was not strong enough, he would not have been able to inscribe a talisman array with his spiritual power. If that was the case, perhaps he really did reach the perfect state. Zhou Lin saw the change in Qin Chuan's expression and asked with concern, "How is it? Did you notice that you're different from others?" Qin Chuan nodded and said, "If you didn't remind me, I really wouldn't have noticed those special things." "If that's the case, you have indeed touched upon the realm of perfection." Zhou Lin looked at Qin Chuan with gratification and said, "You did not disappoint me." Faced with Zhou Lin's joyful gaze, Qin Chuan also felt a little elated. After all, he had always yearned to possess great power. Now that he had touched upon the perfect state of brain development, it was equivalent to obtaining a pass to become a powerhouse. Of course, he would feel excited about this. However, because there was no way to turn this potential into real strength for the time being, he was only a little happy. In fact, he wasn't too excited. For the current you, the perfect realm might not increase your strength significantly. But when you reach a higher realm, you will find that as long as you are one step faster than others, you will always be one step faster than others. For others, instantiating a domain was a very difficult thing, but it was different for you. As long as you reached a certain level, instantiating a domain would be a matter of course. When that time comes, the advantages of the perfect realm will be fully displayed. Speaking of which, Zhou Lin was a little envious of Qin Chuan. Although her brain development had reached a shocking 97% and logically speaking, She had at least a 70% chance of instantiating a domain. Even so, she might still fail. To succeed, luck and strength were indispensable. On the other hand, for Qin Chuan, instantiating a domain was as natural and simple as eating and drinking water. There was no difficulty at all. How could people not be envious of such a talent? As far as I know, no one in the 6 great academies has touched upon the perfect realm, so you must be careful and keep this matter a secret. Don't leak it out. Zhou Lin patiently reminded Qin Chuan again to not leak this matter. Once it was leaked, it would definitely lead to a fatal disaster. I know. Qin Chuan nodded seriously. This matter concerned his life and death, so of course he would be careful to keep it a secret. Oh right, senior sister, since you've advanced to the foundation establishment stage, you should have already held a celebration banquet, right? I haven't given you a gift yet. Qin Chuan said to Zhou Lin with some regret. It's a pity that I couldn't attend the banquet, but I'll definitely make up for the gift. It was a pity that the demon core was of the earth element, while Zhou Lin's talent rune was of the metal element. Otherwise, he could have given it to Zhou Lin as a gift. There's no hurry about the gift. Moreover, I didn't hold a celebration banquet. Qin Chuan was a little surprised and asked, why is that? Even though Qin Chuan was not very knowledgeable, he knew that cultivators who had advanced to the foundation establishment stage would hold a celebration banquet to share the joy of advancing to the foundation establishment stage with their friends and family. It was somewhat similar to the graduation banquet. Zhou Lin had advanced for 2 months, but she had not held a celebration banquet. This was something he did not expect. It couldn't be that she was hiding her strength, right? There's no reason. I just don't want everyone to know, Zhou Lin explained casually. If you don't think it's appropriate, we can just celebrate when we meet. Zhou Lin explained faintly and then said, if you think it's inappropriate, we can just celebrate when we meet. The two chatted for a while more before ending the call. Qin Chuan took out the chip from the optical computer and walked to Yu Kai, who was sitting not far away. He returned the optical computer to Yu Kai and said, thank you for sponsoring the optical computer. Just take it. It's not worth much anyway. Yu Kai shook her head and did not take the optical computer from Qin Chuan. Looking at the smile on Qin Chuan's face, she was a little disappointed and asked, Qin Chuan, did you have a good time chatting with your senior sister Zhou Lin? Yeah. Qin Chuan grinned. Of course he was happy to know that his brain development had reached the perfect state. Looking at the sincere smile on Qin Chuan's face, Yu Kai-er's mood could not help but become even more depressed. As expected, compared to getting along with her, Qin Chuan obviously preferred to get along with senior sister Zhou Lin. In the cultivation room, Zhou Lin was lying on the floor. Thinking about Qin Chuan's brain development reaching the perfect state, her heart could not help but surge with endless fighting spirit. She needed to become stronger so that she would not fall behind in the future. Ding dong. A melodious sound of the doorbell rang. Immediately, the door of the cultivation room slowly opened. A tall figure walked in from outside and said to Zhou Lin, Lin, this is the list of people who entered and left the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range yesterday. Here. No need. Zhou Lin gently shook her head and said, there's no need to investigate in the future. The person looked at Zhou Lin with some surprise, but did not ask much. She casually put the information aside and looked at Zhou Lin with some envy. Lin, ever since you advanced to the foundation establishment stage, I found that your skin has become better and better. I also have to advance to the foundation establishment stage as soon as possible. But it's too difficult to apply for a bottle of foundation establishment elixir from the school. I really envy you, you can actually buy foundation establishment elixir from outside. Looking at her best friend's distressed appearance, Zhou Lin could not help but smile slightly. Some things could not be bought with money. Chapter 88. In the evening, Qin Chuan stood in front of the porthole and looked at the bustling western sun city. He couldn't help but feel a lofty feeling in his heart. One day, he would be able to rely on his own strength to stand above the heavens and earth and look down on all living things. We'll be returning home soon, but my father is a little busy and doesn't have time to see you for the time being. Yukar stood beside Qin Chuan and whispered to Qin Chuan, I'm really sorry. Why are you apologizing to me? Your father is the patriarch of the family. It's normal for him to be busy with a lot of work. Qin Chuan smiled and didn't take this matter to heart. Yu Kai-er's father was the patriarch of the Yu family. It was normal for him to not have time to see an insignificant person like him. He didn't feel that he was being treated coldly. Seeing that Qin Chuan didn't take it to heart, Yu Kai-er was slightly relieved. In fact, her father wasn't usually busy and spent most of his time cultivating or recuperating. He often stayed at home. The reason why he didn't have time to see Qin Chuan was mostly because he didn't want to see Qin Chuan. Yu Kai-er could more or less guess the reason why her father didn't want to see Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan, who didn't want to become the son-in-law of the Yu family, wasn't worthy of her father's excessive attention. The 3-year agreement in Yu Kai-er's heart might really be a promise, but in her father's eyes it was just an excuse. Compared to meeting the patriarch of the Yu family, Qin Chuan was clearly more interested in the auction. With the status of the Yu family in Western Sun City, the auction house would always send a list to the Yu family the day before the auction. The list would clearly record the information and origin of each item on the auction stage as a show of respect to the Yu family. Although Qin Chuan was very curious about this list, he didn't intend to borrow it. This was because he wanted to personally see the auction items and experience the feeling of surprise. Because Qin Chuan was very interested in the auction, Yu Kai-er was also interested in it. She curiously asked Qin Chuan, Will the items you want appear in the auction? Qin Chuan pondered for a moment and said, If there's something with the lightning attribute, I naturally want it. There are also talisman brushes and talisman arrays. These are all things I want, but I won't necessarily buy them. Simply speaking, it wasn't that he didn't want to buy them, but he couldn't afford them. The current Qin Chuan could be said to be poor. The only thing he could buy at the auction, of course, of the items of the auction, of the items of the demon cores of Qin Chuan. Yu Kai-er carefully memorized Qin Chuan's needs. She had already made a decision. If something that Qin Chuan needed appeared in the auction, then she would buy it for him. If Qin Chuan didn't want to accept it, then she would use the excuse of lending it to him. Qin Chuan didn't know what Yu Kai-er was planning. At this time, the airship had arrived above the Yu residence and was about to land. Qin Chuan looked at the huge manor under his feet through the window and couldn't help but sigh at the strength of the Yu family. In a place like Xiang City where every inch of land was worth gold, it wasn't possible to build such a huge manor with just money. When the airship landed steadily on the platform, a Zhu appeared again and led Qin Chuan and Yu Kai out of the airship. They took a private car and went to the banquet hall. The Yu family was going to hold a celebratory banquet for Yu Kai-er's return. After hearing about it, Qin Chuan declined Yu Kai-er's invitation on the grounds that he was not feeling well. He also asked someone to send him to the guest room. After Qin Chuan left, a Zhu slightly pursed her lips and said to Yu Kai, It is a wise choice for Qin Chuan not to attend the banquet. Yu Kai was a little surprised and asked, Why is that? Your mother knows about the matter between you and Qin Chuan. Although she didn't say anything, she invited most of the young elites of Xiang City to attend the banquet. Many of them are your admirers. What do you think will happen if Qin Chuan appears at the banquet? A Zhu looked deeply at Yu Kai and said, You are the princess of our Yu family. Only you can refuse others, no one can refuse you. Do you understand? Yu Kai looked at a Zhu in a daze, but in the end she remained silent and didn't say anything. In the guest room, Qin Chuan was sitting on the sofa with his eyes slightly closed. He was using his perception to touch everything in the room as much as possible. He was carefully perceiving the texture of everything. It was a strange feeling, as if his soul was integrated into every corner of the room. He could clearly understand the layout and changes in every inch of the room. Even the flow of air became concrete and vivid. This was a feeling that Qin had never had before. Or, it was a feeling of being ignored by him. In the perception of ordinary people, a room was a room, and a vase was a vase, but in Qin's perception, it was as if everything was alive and moving all the time. This strange feeling only lasted for about 2 minutes before Qin had no choice but to stop. This was because doing so consumed too much of his mental energy. With his current physical condition, it was very difficult for him to maintain this state for too long. Even if he completely recovered, he would probably only be able to last for 5 minutes. The reason why he couldn't wait to experience the changes in his perception was purely to verify Zhou Lin's conjecture. Senior sister is really senior sister. You know much more than me. Qin grinned. After a moment of rest, he got up and went to the small cultivation room in the guest room, ready to cultivate. After he advanced to the qi refining stage, the thunder-devouring art finally revealed the second level of mental cultivation method, and at the same time, a new thunder talisman array. Back when he was in the Cloud Dragon mountain range, he didn't have the time to study this. Now that he had settled down in the Yu family, he finally had the time to figure out the new mental cultivation method, as well as the inscription method of the new talisman array. Right when Qin was sitting cross-legged on the ground and circulating the lightning devour technique, his body suddenly trembled slightly. After that, boundless golden talisman markings suddenly surged out from his body, and it was like an ocean that instantly drowned him beneath it. This is, Qin slowly opened his eyes and looked at the sea of talisman characters in front of him with a surprised expression. The vivid golden talisman characters were the most beautiful thing in the world in Qin's eyes. It was pleasing to the eye. Whoosh! The sea of talisman characters flowed, and the talisman characters jumped out of it like swimming fish. In front of Qin, they formed two very familiar talisman arrays. Chapter 89. Qin looked at the two talisman arrays that appeared in front of him in astonishment. He exclaimed, "Spiritual reception talisman array? Spiritual injection talisman array?" Qin wouldn't be mistaken. The two talisman arrays that appeared in front of him were the spiritual reception talisman array and spiritual injection talisman array that he had seen in Black City. Just when Qin said the names of the two talisman arrays, the two talisman arrays suddenly collapsed and turned into 2 rows of runes. They were clearly displayed in a specific order in front of Qin. It seemed that they wanted Qin to remember the order of the arrangement. Seeing the changes in the two talisman arrays, Qin suddenly had a very bold guess in his heart. The Sea of Runes might be teaching him how to inscribe the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array and Spiritual Injection Talisman Array. Although it sounded incredible, it was the truth. When Qin firmly remembered the order and evolution of the runes of the two talisman arrays, the two talisman arrays finally dissipated completely in the Sea of Runes. The next moment, Qin's consciousness was blurred. When he woke up again, he had returned to the cultivation room as if nothing had happened. Qin raised his head and glanced at the clock in the cultivation room. It was now 18:22:30 in the afternoon. He remembered that this was the time when he entered the cultivation room and sat down. The difference between the two times should be less than 3 seconds. In other words, he spent about half an hour in the Sea of Runes, but only a blink of an eye had passed in reality. However, this wasn't the thing that Qin was most concerned about. What he was most concerned about now was whether he could successfully inscribe the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array and Spiritual Injection Talisman Array according to the method taught by the Sea of Runes with his current strength. Inscribing a higher-level talisman array required a talisman pen and a disc array, which happened to be in the cultivation room. Qin Chuan couldn't wait to take the talisman pen and disc array and began to inscribe. Soon, he failed. Looking at the talisman array that was like graffiti on the disc array, Qin Chuan took a deep breath and calmed his excitement. After his state of mind calmed down, he began a new inscription, but he failed again. I clearly inscribed according to the method taught by the Sea of Runes. How could I fail? Qin Chuan scratched his head and was puzzled. After the third and fourth inscription failed, Qin Chuan had to admit that although he had mastered the method of inscribing the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array and Spiritual Injection Talisman Array with his current strength, there was no way to inscribe it successfully. This feeling of being unable to excavate a treasure mountain made Qin Chuan feel uncomfortable. No, if I can't inscribe these two talisman arrays with my strength, then there's no need for the Sea of Runes to show me the method of inscribing these two talisman arrays now. There must be a problem in one of the links. Qin Chuan thought for a while, and finally looked at the talisman pen and disc array in his hand. What if I abandon the talisman pen and disc array, and just use my mental strength to inscribe the talisman array? When this thought emerged in his mind, Qin Chuan's heart could not help but beat violently. He forced himself to calm down, put down the talisman pen and disc array in his hand, and concentrated on inscribing the talisman array in the void with his mental strength. As time passed, Qin Chuan's face gradually turned pale, and a dense layer of sweat seeped out of his forehead. He was exhausted to the extreme. However, at this time, only half of the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array was inscribed. Although he had not succeeded, Qin Chuan was already convinced that he had found the correct inscription method. When the time came to 19 o'clock, Qin Chuan finally successfully inscribed the last talisman with his mental strength. In the next moment, the dozens of talismans that were floating in the void were strictly put together, forming a talisman array that emitted a hazy light. The Spiritual Reception Talisman Array was successfully inscribed. Looking at the talisman array that appeared in front of him, although Qin Chuan felt dizzy, he was extremely excited. He had actually inscribed a fourth-level talisman at the first level of Qi refinement. No. Qin Chuan frowned slightly. He carefully sensed the activity of the spiritual aura in the cultivation room and found that under the enhancement of the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array, the activity of the spiritual aura in the cultivation room only increased by about 30%. It did not reach the level that Chu Hua once said to him that it could increase by 3 times. In other words, the enhancement effect of the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array that he inscribed with his mental strength was only 1/10 of the original. I understand now. Qin Chuan suddenly understood. With his current strength, inscribing a real fourth-level talisman array was completely whimsical. However, if he wanted to inscribe a fourth-level talisman array that was 10 times weaker, then it might not be impossible. What the Sea of Runes taught him was not the inscription method of the real Spiritual Reception Talisman Array, but the inscription method of the weakened version of the Spiritual Reception Talisman Array. After thinking through this, Qin Chuan's mood gradually calmed down. The difficulty of inscribing a Spiritual Reception Talisman Array that was 10 times weaker was equivalent to the difficulty of inscribing an ordinary first-level talisman array. With his current strength, being able to successfully inscribe a first-level talisman array was a normal thing. It was not something to be proud of. It seems that I still overestimated myself. Qin Chuan smiled bitterly. At first, he really thought that he was talented and could inscribe a fourth-level talisman array when he just entered the Qi refinement stage. Now it seemed that he really thought too much. However, Qin Chuan did gain something. At least in his knowledge, there was no first-level talisman array that could play the role of spiritual reception talisman array. In other words, the Sea of Runes weakened the spiritual reception talisman array, which was equivalent to creating a brand new first-level talisman array. Moreover, it was a first-level talisman array that was helpful for cultivation. However, in order to inscribe this weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array, one must first have an incomparably strong mental strength. In other words, this weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array was completely created to cater to Qinchuan. Even if other people learned it, they might not be able to learn it. Although it's only a 30% enhancement effect, if the spiritual infusion talisman array is added, then this stacked enhancement will become very amazing. It means that my cultivation time for one day is almost equivalent to 1.5 days of other people's cultivation time. Over time, my advantage will become bigger and bigger. In the future, when my cultivation level is higher, I might be able to inscribe a spiritual reception talisman array and spiritual infusion talisman array with a stronger enhancement effect. As expected of the Sea of Runes, it's really amazing. Qinchuan grinned, then fell back and directly fainted. There was no other way. In order to inscribe this weakened version of the spiritual reception talisman array, Qinchuan used too much mental strength. It was really his limit to be able to hold on until now before falling asleep. Chapter 90. When Qinchuan woke up, it was already the next morning. He opened his eyes in a daze, and the first thing he saw was Yu Kai, who was squatting beside him and looking at him with a smile. "You're finally awake." Seeing Qinchuan wake up, Yu Kai teased Qinchuan with a smile. "I thought you had been cultivating in the cultivation room all night, but I didn't expect you to be sleeping here." Qinchuan sat up, stretched his body, and grinned, saying, "I was too tired from cultivating yesterday, so I fell asleep unconsciously." After a night's rest, Qinchuan became full of energy again. He looked around and asked Yu Kai, "When you came in, did you find anything special?" Qinchuan didn't know when the spirit-receiving talisman array dissipated after he fell asleep. If Yu Kai accidentally saw it, it would be hard to explain. This also reminded Qinchuan that in the future, when he wasn't sure whether the surrounding environment was safe or not, it was better not to act rashly. After all, Qinchuan didn't think that all talisman matrix masters could inscribe talisman matrices with their spiritual power in the qi refining stage. If this matter was spread out, it would inevitably attract unnecessary attention. "No, I didn't." Yu Kai shook her head and said to Qinchuan, "When I came in, I saw you lying on the ground, but I didn't notice anything special." Qinchuan nodded slightly and understood. It seemed that the weakened version of the spirit-receiving talisman array would dissipate soon after losing the support of his spiritual power. Otherwise, the spiritual qi in the cultivation room wouldn't have recovered to the normal level so quickly. "Let's go and have breakfast." During breakfast, Yu Kai didn't mention anything about the banquet last night, and Qinchuan didn't ask about it. The two's conversation was mainly focused on the upcoming auction in the evening. According to Yu Kai, she saw a lot of rare treasures on the list sent by the auction, which would definitely be a feast for Qinchuan's eyes. This also made Qinchuan look forward to the auction tonight even more. The afternoon was spent in cultivation. After dinner at 6 o'clock in the evening, Qinchuan and Yu Kai finally met Aju, who was going to attend the auction. Together, they got on the shuttle to the auction site. The auction was held in the Guang'an Trading Company in Xi'an City. As one of the top auction organizers in the Star Dragon Federation, the Guang'an Trading Company had branches in every large city in the Federation, and the Guang'an Trading Company in Xi'an City was one of the many branches. But even if it was just a branch, the area was as large as 2 football fields, enough to accommodate tens of thousands of customers at the same time, and it didn't feel crowded at all. The Yu family had a dedicated shuttle parking area on the platform above the Guang and Trading Company. After Qin Chuan and the others got off the shuttle, they could directly take the exclusive elevator in the area directly to the box at the auction site. The treatment could be said to be quite good. This was the first time that Qin Chuan enjoyed this kind of senior VIP treatment, which made Qin Chuan once again realize the importance of strength. If the Yu family didn't have the strength to dominate Xi'an City, the Guang and Trading Company might not have paid so much attention to the Yu family. The box was very large, with an area of 300 square meters, but there were only 3 seats. Obviously, this was the arrangement made by the Guang and Trading Company in advance after learning how many people from the Yu family would be present. On the walls around the box there were crystal screens with no blind spots, which allowed the people in the box to clearly see the whole auction site. The view was absolutely wide. Today, there are only 3 of us here, so be casual and don't be restrained. Aju's words were mainly for Qin Chuan. She knew that Qin Chuan had never participated in an auction of this level, so she deliberately reminded Qin Chuan to relax a little and not be too nervous. I will, thank you. Qin Chuan sat in his seat and watched the auction site through the crystal screen. Although many people had entered, the site was very quiet, and not many people were talking. Obviously, these people knew the rules, and no one would make a lot of noise on such an occasion. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and then the door of the box was opened from the outside. A handsome young man in a high-end custom-made suit slowly walked in from the outside and said to Aju with a smile, "Sister Aju, you don't mind me coming in uninvited, right?" Looking at the young man who suddenly appeared, Aju frowned slightly and said, "Guahao, for the sake of your father, I won't argue with you this time, but if you enter without permission next time, I will break your hand that opened the door." In the face of Aju's cold warning, Guahao just smiled and didn't take it to heart. He looked at Qin Chuan and sized him up, and then said with a smile, "You must be Qin Chuan, young Master Qin, who shocked the world in the battle of the Hidden Dragon Arena and killed the demon beast with your own hands. Nice to meet you." "You are?" Qin Chuan was a little surprised. He saw that Guahao actually came for him. "I'm ashamed to say this, but that good-for-nothing Guaxing is my younger brother." This time, he was able to leave the Cloud Dragon Mountain range alive because of young Master Qin's help. "I heard that young Master Qin used 3 Thunder Spirit Stones in order to kill that monstrous beast. Therefore, I specially brought a few Thunder Spirit Stones today to express my gratitude to young Master Qin." While talking, Guahao gently clapped his hands, and a waiter behind him walked in front of Qin Chuan with a delicate silver tray. On the tray, 10 Thunder Spirit Stones were neatly placed. The quality was definitely much better than what Qin Chuan got from the Thunder Beast's cave. "It's just a small token of my appreciation. I hope young Master Qin will accept it." In the face of Guahao's kindness, Qin Chuan slightly pursed his lips and said, "I'm not a young master, I'm just a nobody. You can call me Qin Chuan, but please don't call me young Master Qin. As for the kindness you said, I can't accept it all." With that, Qin Chuan reached out and picked up 2 Thunder Spirit Stones from the tray, and then said to Guahao, "The quality of this Thunder Spirit Stone is good, it should be able to reach the middle grade. One of them is enough to match the 3 ordinary Thunder Spirit Stones I used to lay out the array. As for the other one, it's a thank-you gift for saving your brother. In this way we're even, we don't owe each other anything." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Aju's eyes couldn't help but show a touch of appreciation. With Qin Chuan's background, he could still maintain a calm and rational mentality in the face of such a generous gift. It could be said that his performance was very good. Yukair was also very happy. Although she felt that Qin Chuan would have no problem accepting all of them, she was happy that Qin Chuan only took 2. Worthy of Qin Chuan. Guahao looked deeply at Qin Chuan and said, "I hope there will be a chance to deal with you again in the future. Goodbye." Chapter 91. After Guo Hao left the Yu family's box, he turned around and returned to the Guo family's box. Seeing Guo Hao enter the room, several young people sitting on the sofa immediately asked him about the situation with curious faces. Guo Hao, have you seen that Qin Chuan? What do you think of that kid? If you ask me, why are you so polite to that kid? Isn't he just a genius? Even if he has some talent in talisman arrays, that's all. Don't talk nonsense. Listen to Guo Hao. Everyone was talking and laughing at the same time. They did not take Qin Chuan seriously at all. However, with their family's status, there was indeed no need to think too highly of Qin Chuan. Alright, all of you shut up. Guo Hao walked over and sat down. He looked at everyone with a rather serious expression and said, "We have all underestimated that Qin Chuan." As Guo Hao spoke, everyone quieted down and patiently waited for Guo Hao to continue. That kid is probably the most sensible young man I have ever seen. Just from the fact that he can control his inner desires and is neither arrogant nor impatient, he is worthy of our attention. Guo Hao bluntly stated his first impression of Qin Chuan. As the eldest son of the Guo clan, his status was extremely high and he had seen too many young geniuses. Those people were either arrogant because of their talent or they were subservient to others. This was the first time he had seen someone like Qin Chuan, who was neither servile nor overbearing. If you can evaluate this Qin Chuan in such a way, then he is a little interesting. A young man with dyed dark blue hair chuckled and said, "I kind of want to get in touch with him. After all, he also saved our Gao Zhenyu. I should also thank him. Why don't we go together? Xiao Ying was also saved by him. I also want to thank him." Another girl with a somewhat average figure said with a smile. However, there was an inexplicable light in her eyes. Obviously, she had other thoughts in her mind. Guo Hao was very clear about the intentions of these people. Rather than thanking Qin Chuan, it was better to say that they were trying to rope in Qin Chuan. He sneered and said indifferently, "Actually, you don't have to be in a hurry to show up. Qin Chuan does have some ability, but I don't think the Li family will let him go so easily." As he spoke, Guo Hao looked at the tall figure sitting on the other side and asked, "Li Man, am I right? You really have a lot of nonsense to say." Li Man looked at the crowd indifferently and said coldly, "The day Qin Chuan leaves the Yu clan, you will naturally know the answer." Hearing Li Man's response, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. They all saw a hint of playfulness in each other's eyes. It seemed that the Li family really didn't intend to let Qin Chuan go. This way, there would be a good show to watch. After being quiet for so long, it was time for Xiang City to be lively. On the other side, after Guo Hao left, a Zhu directly said to Qin Chuan, "I guess that Guo Hao is just a representative who was pushed out to see you. There must be others who want to see you, but they haven't shown up yet." Qin Chuan smiled slightly and said, "It's the people from the other 4 families." "Yes." A Zhu nodded and said, "Your true identity has been exposed. It's impossible for them not to have any interest in you. Guo Hao's contact with you is just the beginning. There will be more people who will come in contact with you in the future." "There won't be a future." Qin Chuan grinned, "I won't give them a chance." Qin Chuan really wouldn't give those people a chance. After learning about the strength of the Yu clan, he also had a certain understanding of the other 4 families. He knew that he could sit here calmly now because of the influence of the Yu clan. However, the Yu clan couldn't protect him for a lifetime. Therefore, after the auction was over, Qin Chuan was ready to activate the Black Moon badge and wait for Ningya to come and pick him up. He believed that with Ningya, even if those families were arrogant, they wouldn't dare to do anything to him. Of course, if Ningya was not willing to protect him, then he could only admit that he was unlucky. However, the probability of this happening should be very small. Recalling the scene when he first met Ningya, Qin Chuan suddenly felt a little uncertain. No matter what that seductress did, Qin Chuan wouldn't be surprised. It seems that I have to prepare another way out. Qin Chuan was somewhat helpless. The feeling of survival in the cracks was really too difficult. Ding ding dang dang. With the crisp and pleasant sound of the bell, the huge auction house almost quieted down in an instant. Qin Chuan looked at the ripples that were visible to the naked eye and was a little surprised. Those were the fluctuations of spiritual power. That's the sound of Guang An, the signature magic weapon of Guang An Bell. The real Guang An Bell is in the headquarters of Guang An House, and the one here is just a replica. The sound of the Guang An Bell with a special hammer has the effect of concentrating and calming the qi. Often listening to it is of great benefit to polishing the state of mind. A Zhu faintly explained to Qin Chuan, this is also some of the benefits of Guang An House's auction for the customers. After hearing a Zhu's explanation, Qin Chuan silently felt the changes in his state of mind. Sure enough, his state of mind was much calmer than before. But after the auction starts, the scene will be lively again. A Zhu pursed her lips and smiled. After all, this is an auction. It's really not appropriate to be so quiet. Just as a Zhu was talking, a beautiful figure in a bright red dress slowly ascended the auction stage in the center of the auction house. It was a very beautiful woman, exuding amazing charm from head to toe, which made people have an impulse to get close to her. Yukire saw Qin Chuan staring at the woman in the red dress, and could not help but stretch out her hand and pinch Qin Chuan's arm. The pain made Qin Chuan instantly come to his senses and turn his eyes to Yukire. Yukire pouted and said to Qin Chuan, that woman's appearance is actually ordinary. What's good about her is her seduction skill. Don't fall for it. Hearing Yukire's words, Qin Chuan let out a long breath and said, now I suddenly understand why the Guang An Bell was rung before. If it weren't for the Guang An Bell, people would have blushed when they saw the woman in the red dress. But even so, there were still many people with weak minds who were fascinated by her. I'm Hong Xiu. Welcome to the auction of Guang An House. This time, I will be the auctioneer. If my performance is not good, I hope you can forgive me. The woman in the red dress, who called herself Hong Xiu, looked at the crowd with seductive eyes and said with a smile, I won't talk nonsense. Let's start today's topic. Let's welcome the first auction item today, the Blue Water Sword, a middle-grade magic weapon produced by the Divine Workshop. Chapter 92. As we all know, the products of the Divine Workshop must be of high quality. Although this blue water sword is only a middle-grade magic weapon, a large amount of water essence has been integrated into it during the forging process, which makes the blue water sword more compatible with water runes. If we can find a rune array master who is proficient in water runes to inscribe runes on this blue water sword, there is a great chance that the quality of this blue water sword can be upgraded to high grade. While speaking, Hong Xiu pulled out the blue water sword from the scabbard. The water blue sword body emitted a soft light, as if the water was fluctuating, which was extremely magical. Ladies and gentlemen, the starting price of the blue water sword is 1,000,000 star dragon coins, and each increment must not be less than 100,000 star dragon coins. As Hong Xiu's voice fell, the auction site immediately became lively. Many people with water runes began to bid enthusiastically. In just a few breaths, the price of this blue water sword had been raised to 1,800,000 star dragon coins. Seeing the crazy bidding, Qin Chuan could not help but click his tongue. It was really worthy of being a large auction held once every half a year. The first item to be auctioned was unexpectedly so popular. Qin Chuan, do you want this blue water sword? Yukire had been paying attention to the changes in Qin Chuan's expression. When she noticed the fiery light in Qin Chuan's eyes, she could not help but be a little puzzled. Qin Chuan was of thunder attribute, so why was he so interested in the water attribute blue water sword? I don't want this blue water sword, but I didn't expect that a middle-grade magic weapon could be auctioned for such a sky-high price. Qin Chuan said with some emotion, "In the past, I was really no different from a frog at the bottom of a well. I was too inexperienced." Qin Chuan was very glad to be able to participate in this auction. Although he might not be able to afford anything, he could definitely broaden his horizons and mind, which would be of great benefit to his future growth. Hearing Qin Chuan's self-deprecation, Zhu couldn't help but look at Qin Chuan again. If someone else said such a thing, she would think that it was a lack of self-confidence, but when these words came from Qin Chuan's mouth, she felt that it was a clear self-awareness, which was an extremely rare quality. Only those who had a clear understanding of their own shortcomings could clearly understand what they needed and what they should do in the future. Such people would definitely go further than others. At least for now, Qin Chuan was already at the forefront of his peers. Even compared to the geniuses of the upper-class families, he was not much worse. Soon, the price of the blue water sword had been raised to 3 million. At this time, no one was bidding anymore. After Hong Xiu counted down from 3, she raised her hand and knocked on the guang and bell beside her with a delicate golden hammer. She smiled and said, "Congratulations to Mr. 1086 for buying the blue water sword at the price of 3 million. Next, let's continue to auction the second item. The middle-grade magic weapon, the Immortal Boots, is also a product of the Divine Workshop. But unlike the blue water sword, the Immortal Boots has been inscribed with a third-level Immortal Walking Talisman array. It can allow you to travel thousands of miles in a day and ride the clouds and mist." Hong Xiu's words caused a huge sensation at the scene. It was well known that only the powerful cultivators of the gold core stage could fly in the air. But the Immortal Boots could let cultivators below the gold core stage have the ability to fly in the air with the help of the talisman array. Just based on this point, the value of the Immortal Boots was equal to that of a top-grade magic weapon. Before the auction began, our Guang and Bank had tested the Immortal Boot. Cultivators at the first level of the Qi refining stage could fly in the air for 15 seconds with the help of the Immortal Boots, while cultivators at the first level of the Foundation establishment stage could fly in the air for 10 minutes with the help of the Immortal Boot. The faster the speed, the shorter the time. As for the specific data, I think the friend who bought the Immortal Boots can calculate it himself. Now, the bidding for the Immortal Boots begins. The starting price is 3 million Star Dragon coins, and each increment must be no less than 100,000. 5 million. I'm determined to get the Immortal Boot. 6 million. 7 million. In the blink of an eye, the price of the Immortal Boots had gone straight to 10 million. Even so, there were still a lot of people who refused to give up. They kept bidding, showing that they were determined to get the Immortal Boot. In the private room, Qin Chuan looked at the pair of luxurious boots on the auction stage with envy. If he had the money, he would also want a pair of boots like this. Whether it was during a battle or when he was running for his life, it would be of great help. It was simply a must-have weapon for cultivators below the Golden Core stage to travel the Jianghu. It's also a middle-grade magic weapon, but because of different uses, its value will be different. Zhu looked at the lively scene of the auction and said with some emotion, "For cultivators at the Foundation establishment stage, the importance of the Immortal Boots is equivalent to a second life, but for cultivators at the Qi refining stage, it's a bit useless." Qin Chuan couldn't help but turn to look at Zhu. He could hear that Zhu was implicitly reminding him that even if he got the Immortal Boots with his strength, he couldn't exert the full effect of the Immortal Boots. On the contrary, because of his low cultivation, it was easy to arouse the malice of others. "This Zhu thinks too highly of me. The price of the Immortal Boots has been raised to 16 million. How can I afford it?" Could it be Qin Chuan seemed to have thought of something, and couldn't help but look at Yu Kair, who was sitting next to him. He pursed his lips, and as if talking to himself, he said in a low voice, I'm here to broaden my horizons. I don't intend to bid for anything. Even if someone gives me something, I won't accept it. I won't accept a reward without any effort. Yukai, who was patiently waiting for the opportunity to bid, heard Qinchuan's words. She couldn't help but be stunned. She turned to look at Qinchuan and happened to meet Qinchuan's deep eyes. Her face couldn't help but turn red. She immediately lowered her head and pouted. If you don't want to buy it, then don't buy it. What's the big deal? Sitting on the other side, when Zhu saw the performance of Qinchuan and Yukai, she couldn't help but quietly breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Qinchuan was a calm and rational person. Otherwise, if Yukai replaced Qinchuan to bid for the immortal boots, would she buy it or not? After this incident, Zhu could be said to be more and more pleasing to the eye for Qinchuan. Sister Zhu, I want to ask, how much can my demon core be sold for? Qinchuan was now very curious about the value of the demon core. If the demon core was valuable, it wasn't impossible for him to bid for something he was interested in later. The value will probably fluctuate between 20 million and 30 million. Zhu answered Qinchuan's question without hesitation. If a cultivator with an Earth attribute talent Rune urgently needed an Earth attribute demon core, maybe the value of this demon core would be higher. Chapter 93. Qinchuan was very surprised by Zhu's answer. He didn't expect that a small demon nucleus would be so valuable. Don't underestimate that demon core of yours. Although our human clan often fights with the demon clan, we can only obtain some demon cores when we have an absolute advantage over the demon clan. In other situations, almost all defeated demon clans will choose to self-destruct their demon cores, not giving us a chance to obtain them at all. Therefore, demon cores have always been extremely precious. If you hadn't killed the demon beast with a thunderous force, this demon nucleus may not have been intact. Hearing Zhu's explanation, Qinchuan nodded thoughtfully. He originally thought that every time he killed a demonic beast, he would be able to obtain a demonic core. But now it seemed that he was thinking too much. Sure enough, I still know too little. Qinchuan sighed helplessly. Being born in the slums had greatly limited Qinchuan's vision and imagination. It was no exaggeration to say that in the past, Qinchuan had been running around almost every day to make a living. There was no chance for him to learn about demon beasts. Naturally, he had no way to understand the difficulty and specific value of demon nuclei. This may be basic knowledge for others, but for Qinchuan, it was really a knowledge-blind spot. It's not enough to just travel thousands of miles. I still have to read thousands of books. Nowadays, it was the era of network information. Technology was unprecedentedly developed. Almost all information could be queried through the optical computer. Qinchuan felt that it was necessary for him to take a certain amount of time to cram some basic knowledge. Otherwise, if he didn't know anything and needed to ask others, what was the difference between him and a fool? As if seeing Qinchuan's thoughts, Zhu smiled and said to Qinchuan, "Our Yu family has a library, which is all-encompassing. If you need, I can help you arrange it. It's not troublesome." Qinchuan heard the words and looked at Zhu with some surprise, then nodded gently and said very sincerely, "Thank you." In the end, the boots of immortality were bought by customer number 89 for 28 million. Although the price was a little high, it was still within a reasonable range. The third item is an extremely well-preserved Earth-type demon core. Hong Xiu smiled and reached out to pick up the thumb-sized demon nucleus from the golden tray beside her. She showed it to everyone on the scene in front of the camera. Everyone can see that this demon core is a complete whole, and there aren't any cracks or signs of damage on it. It's an extremely rare demon core. No matter if it's used for cultivation or used to forge magic treasures, it's an excellent choice. Let's begin the auction now. The starting price is 10 million Star Dragon coins, and each increment must be no less than 1 million. Demon cores were hard to come by, and complete demon cores were even harder to come by. To the cultivators with Earth attribute innate talismans present, they were absolutely treasures that couldn't be missed. When Qin Chuan saw the demon core, he immediately recognized it as his own. At this moment, he couldn't help but look forward to seeing what kind of price this demon core would fetch. Soon, the price of this demon core was raised from 10 million to 23 million. At this time, most people had withdrawn from the competition, and only 2 people were still bidding. 25 million. 26 million. Brother, this demon core is extremely important to me. How about giving it to me? 28 million. Sorry, I'm also determined to get this demon core. 30 million. Neither of them was willing to give in. In the end, the price of this demon core was raised to 36 million, which was far beyond Qin Chuan's expectations. The innate talismans of these 2 people should be of Earth attribute. They probably have reached a bottleneck in their cultivation and need the help of the rich Earth spiritual power in this demon core to make a breakthrough. Therefore, the bidding price of your demon core has reached its current height. Zhu smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "You're lucky to meet 2 people who are in urgent need of this demon core." Qin Chuan also felt very lucky. The higher the price of this demon core, the greater his harvest. When he encountered something he wanted, he would naturally have more confidence. Just when Qin Chuan was looking forward to the 2 people to raise the price, one of them chose to give up. In the end, the price of this demon core was fixed at 40 million, which had greatly exceeded the value of this demon core. 40 million. For Qin Chuan, who had a net worth of 1 million, 40 million was definitely an astronomical figure, but after seeing some big scenes, Qin Chuan also knew that 40 million may be a lot for ordinary people, but for this auction, it was just a drizzle. Therefore, Qin Chuan was not too excited. Next, the 4th and 5th auction items were sold for higher and higher prices. In the end, a tight soft armor was sold for a sky-high price of 140 million. When the 10th auction item, the limited edition shuttle of Skywalker No. 9, was sold for 320 million, the warm-up stage of the auction was finally over, and the next highlight was finally about to appear. Everyone, the next auction items will no longer accept Star Dragon coins as payment. We will collect spiritual value points. If there are friends who need to exchange spiritual value points, you can press the red button next to the seat, and there will naturally be an attendant to serve you. The so-called spiritual value points referred to spirit stones. A low-grade spirit stone was equivalent to 1 spiritual value point. Middle-grade and upper-grade spirit stones were converted by 100 times. Spiritual value points were the common currency among cultivators. Generally, when purchasing more precious resources, they would use spiritual value points to conduct transactions. Few cultivators would use common currency like Star Dragon coins. It was reasonable for Guang, and guild to use spiritual value points to bid in the second half of the auction. Hong Xiu smiled slightly, rang the Guang bell, and said loudly, "The next auction item is from the Divine Workshop. It's the best magic treasure flying fish shuttle." Hearing Hong Xiu's words, the audience suddenly exclaimed, "The best magic treasure flying fish shuttle." No one had expected that the highlight would be so exciting. The flying fish shuttle was a flying shuttle. It was named because it looked like a big fish. Not only could it fly, but it could also travel quickly in the water. But this was not the point. The point was that the flying fish shuttle was a magic treasure that could really travel in the universe. Qin Chuan looked at the introduction of the flying fish shuttle on the crystal screen, and his breathing could not help but become a little rapid. Traveling in the universe was something that everyone had dreamed of, and if he wanted to make it a reality, the flying fish shuttle was absolutely necessary. Although the flying fish shuttle was a supreme-grade magic treasure, its true value was definitely not inferior to the rumored Taoist artifacts. Chapter 94. The appearance of the flying fish shuttle set off a great wave in the auction venue. Everyone's eyes were focused on the 3-meter-high and 6-meter-long flying fish-shaped shuttle on the exhibition stand. Everyone's eyes were fiery, and they couldn't wait to take it for themselves. The flying fish shuttle can be said to be the best quality and the most mature technology among the many small shuttles that can travel in the universe. It is also the famous work of the Divine Workshop. It is said that each flying fish shuttle takes at least a year to complete from the beginning to the end, which leads to the production of flying fish shuttles being very low and extremely precious. Zhu said with some emotion, "Such a shuttle that can travel freely in the universe is definitely a treasure that all Starry Sky adventurers dream of." The so-called Starry Sky adventurers were cultivators who explored ancient ruins and traces of other civilizations in the universe. These people often had powerful strength and rich financial resources, both of which were indispensable. Hearing Zhu's words, Qin Chuan asked with some curiosity, "Does your Yu family also sponsor Starry Sky adventurers?" As far as Qin Chuan knew, almost every big family would silently sponsor some Starry Sky adventurers, helping them explore ancient ruins or traces of other civilizations in the universe outside the Star Dragon Federation, so as to expand the family's influence in the Star Dragon Federation. Yu family had such a huge force in Xi'ang City, it would not be difficult for them to establish a team of Starry Sky adventurers. Zhu smiled and said to Qin Chuan, "Didn't Kai mention it to you? The previous patriarch of our Yu family, Kai grandfather, was a powerful Starry Sky adventurer." Hearing Zhu's answer, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be a little surprised. He really didn't expect that Yu Kai's grandfather was a Starry Sky adventurer. This isn't a secret in Western Sun City. Back then, the reason our Yu family was able to rise so quickly and become the #1 family in Western Sun City was because Kai's grandfather discovered a ruin from the Great Chaotic Era in the universe and obtained a great opportunity from it. Because of this, the Yu family was able to develop so quickly and reach the height it is today. Speaking of the rise of the Yu family, Zhu's face couldn't help but reveal a touch of pride. She had always admired Yu Kai's grandfather very much. She once dreamed of becoming a Starry Sky adventurer, but to become a Starry Sky adventurer, she had to at least have the strength of Gold Core Stage. With her current cultivation, she was still far from that. Grandfather has been stationed in the ruins all year round and hasn't returned for 2 years. Speaking of her grandfather, Yu Kai began to miss the old man who was exceptionally kind and doting on her. Soon, in another year, it will be the rotation period. Then, the old man will be able to come back. Zhu smiled and said to Yu Kai, "You can see your grandpa during the summer vacation of your freshman year. I think he must miss you very much." I really didn't expect the rise of the Yu family to be related to the ancient ruins. Qin Chuan sighed in his heart. He could not help but look at the flying fish shuttle on the display platform. There were opportunities everywhere in the ancient ruins. It was no wonder that everyone present was so enthusiastic about the flying fish shuttle. The bidding starts now. The starting price of the flying fish shuttle is 100,000 spiritual value points. Each bid must not be lower than 10,000 spiritual value points. As Hong Xiu's voice fell, the customers in the ordinary seats did not make a move. Most of the people who were bidding for the flying fish shuttle were the VIPs in the private rooms. Soon, the price of the flying fish shuttle was raised to an astonishing price of 300,000 spiritual value points. If one spiritual value point was equivalent to 10,000 Star Dragon coins, 300,000 spiritual value points would be equivalent to 3 billion Star Dragon coins. This amount of money was more than enough to buy a luxurious flying ship like the Yu family. And this was just the beginning of the bidding for the flying fish shuttle. When the price of the flying fish shuttle reached 500,000 spiritual value points, Zhu finally made a move. With this move, she directly added 50,000 spiritual value points. 550,000. Aju's voice was very calm. However, this calm voice succeeded in calming down the heated atmosphere for a moment. This was because the voice came from the second private room of the auction site. As everyone knew, this was the private room of the Yu family. And the Yu family relied on the Starry Sky adventure to rise. This time, the Yu family participated in the bidding for the flying fish shuttle. Obviously, they would not give up so easily. The VIP in the second private room bid 550,000 spiritual value point. Is there any higher bid? As far as I know, this flying fish shuttle is the only product of the Divine Workshop in recent years. If you miss this opportunity, you don't know when you will see the flying fish shuttle again in the auction. Hong Xiu's words successfully aroused everyone's desire to get the flying fish shuttle. Soon, the VIP in the fourth private room bid 560,000 spiritual value point. 600,000. Aju calmly said the new price as if it was just 600,000 star dragon coins. Looking at Aju's calm appearance, Qin Chuan was really shocked. Was this the foundation of the Yu family? For a moment, Qin Chuan looked at Yu Kaier with a strange expression. It seemed that living off a woman was not something unacceptable? Because of Aju's strong move, the auction site was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Everyone's eyes were focused on the several private rooms suspended in the air. Everyone was very curious. Now that the Yu family had made a move, who else could compete with them? 610,000, 650,000. Aju's bid had always been overwhelming. She would never bid 10,000 or 10,000. Only people at this level knew the psychological game in her heart. 650,000, are there any higher bidders? Hong Xiu was very satisfied with this bid. After all, the last time the flying fish shuttle appeared in the auction, it was only sold for 600,000 spiritual value point. But this time, before the dust settled, it had exceeded the previous bid by 50,000 spiritual value point. Her task could be said to have been completed successfully. Just when Hong Xiu was about to ring the Guang unveil, something amazing happened. Suddenly, someone in the first private room, who had been silent, made a bid and directly raised the price to 800,000 spiritual value points. Is the flying fish shuttle only worth 650,000 spiritual value points now? Humph, the Shiman family bid 800,000 spiritual value points. Wow. The scene suddenly boiled up. 800,000 spiritual value points was too high. It was 150,000 spiritual value points. 800,000 spiritual value points. The VIP in the first private room bid 800,000 spiritual value points. Is there a higher bidder? Even Hong Xiu, who had been on the battlefield for a long time, could not help but be excited at this time. This was a sky-high price of 800,000 spiritual value points. It turned out to be the Shiman family. Aju frowned slightly and could not help but hesitate. Before coming, the head of the family had told her that the old man had sent a message back, saying that there would be a big change in the starry sky in the near future. The flying fish shuttle must be obtained, and they must try their best to get it. However, the price of the flying fish shuttle had been raised to 800,000 spiritual value point. She could no longer make the decision and had to ask the head of the family. Chapter 95. Just when Aju was about to contact the Patriarch had already sent a message in advance, indicating Aju to give up this competition. Although Aju was a little surprised, she did not hesitate. She slightly pursed her lips and lightly said, "Since the Shiman clan wants this flying fish shuttle so much, then our Yu clan naturally has to fulfill your wish. We will temporarily give up this bidding." Deliberately mystifying. Obviously, the Shiman clan in the first box was not interested in Aju's words. They even faintly disdained her. However, Aju did not care about the Shiman clan's attitude and calmly dealt with it. Finally, the bidding for the flying fish shuttle was settled. In the end, the Shiman clan won with a sky-high price of 800,000 spirit coins and successfully obtained the Flying Fish Shuttle. The auction of the Flying Fish Shuttle had already ended. Hong Xiu had already rung the Guang'an bell, but the scene was still full of discussion. After all, everyone had just witnessed a transaction worth nearly 1,000,000 spirit value points. Such a huge amount of transaction was not often seen. Everyone, the next auction item is a strange stone. While speaking, Hong Xiu removed the red cloth on the tray beside her, and placed a fist-sized stone on the tray in front of everyone's eyes. This stone was obtained by a starry sky adventurer from an ancient relic. It's invulnerable. Our Guang, an association, once bombarded this stone with a powerful meteor-class laser cannon, but it didn't cause any damage to this stone. There's video evidence. As soon as Hong Xiu's voice fell, a video was suddenly displayed on the huge crystal screen. It was the video of the tester bombarding the stone with a meteor-class laser cannon. From the video, everyone could see that no matter from which angle the tester bombarded the stone would be sent flying. However, after a careful examination, it was discovered that the meteor-class laser cannon could not leave any trace on the stone at all. After the video finished playing, everyone couldn't help but feel a trace of curiosity towards this peculiar rock. It must be known that the meteor-rank single-soldier laser cannon was the most powerful weapon that a single soldier could use in battle. Not to mention destroying a rock, even a middle-grade defensive magic treasure would be shattered by it. Since this rock was able to remain unscathed under the repeated bombardment of the meteor-rank single-soldier laser cannon, then how did this rock shatter in the first place? After many studies, our Guang'an Trading Company did not find out the origin of this stone, nor did we analyze its material. We are unable to provide detailed information for everyone. If there are friends who are interested in collecting such items, then you can bid now. The starting price of this strange stone is 1,000 spirit value points. Each bid must not be less than 100 spirit value points. Obviously, the Guang'an Trading Company did not expect this stone to be auctioned at all. From the start of the auction until now, there was finally an awkward silence for the first time. Although the stone was peculiar, there was nothing special about it other than its hardness. Furthermore, 1,000 spiritual value points was not a small sum of money to the ordinary customers present. Therefore, no one was willing to bid for it. Why? Don't you have friends who want to collect it? Hong Xiu was a little helpless. Although she expected the auction of this strange stone to be awkward, she did not expect it to be so awkward. Just when Hong Xiu thought that this strange stone would not be auctioned, a clear voice suddenly came from the second box. I bid 1,000 spirit value points. As the voice fell, everyone could not help but look at the second box. The Yu family actually made a bid. Could it be that the Yu family recognized this strange stone? After all, the Yu family started out as a starry sky adventurer, and this stone came from the ruins. It seemed reasonable for the Yu family to recognize the origin of this stone. Just when everyone was thinking about why the Yu family would bid for this strange stone, Yu Kai'er and a Zhu in the second box were also very surprised. They did not expect that Qin Chuan would suddenly bid without warning. Moreover, he wanted to buy a stone that had nothing but toughness. Sister Zhu, I remember that according to the exchange rate, 40 million should be able to be exchanged for 4,000 spirit value points. Qin Chuan pursed his lips tightly, staring at the strange stone that was placed on the exhibition table. His heart was about to jump out of his throat. With our Yu family's membership in the Guang'an Bank, you will not be charged any handling fee when you exchange. You can indeed exchange for 4,000 spirit value points. However, I am more curious. Why are you interested in this stone? Zhu was a little curious. With Qin Chuan's character, he should not bid for no reason. It's not easy to participate in an auction. If I don't buy something, wouldn't it be a pity? Qin Chuan grinned and said, This strange stone has some research value, and it's the only thing I can afford, so I want to buy it. I'll treat it as a souvenir of my first auction." Hearing Qinchuan's explanation, Zhu did not think too much about it. Even with the Guang and Bank's ability, they could not detect the uniqueness of this stone. How could Qinchuan study it? She guessed that he just wanted to collect it as a souvenir. As for whether Qinchuan would recognize the origin of this stone, Zhu did not even think about it. With Qinchuan's background and Qinchuan's previous performance, she could see that Qinchuan was extremely lacking in some aspects of knowledge. If Qinchuan could recognize the stone that even the resourceful Guang and Bank could not recognize, then it would be strange. The VIP in the second box has bid 1,000 spirit value point. Is there a higher bidder? As Hong Xiu's voice fell, someone tried to bid 1,100 spirit value point. Soon, the price of the strange stone had been raised to 1,900 spirit value point. During this period, Qinchuan did not bid again. The person who bid 1,900 spirit value points saw that Qinchuan did not bid, and he could not help but panic. Could it be that the other party just casually offered a price and simply wanted to buy something, and did not really take a fancy to this strange stone? Just when this person was regretting in his heart, Qinchuan finally bid 3,000 spirit value points. If anyone is willing to pay a higher price, then I'll give it to you. When he shouted this sentence, Qinchuan's performance was very normal, but in fact, Qinchuan was so excited that his soul was trembling. If the price of this strange stone was raised to more than 4,000 spirit value points, he might have to borrow money from Zhu. But in this way, some things would not be easy to explain. Hearing the person in the second box clearly say that it was only for collection, finally, no one bid. When Hong Xiu rang the Guang and bell, Qinchuan swallowed his heart that had jumped to his throat back into his stomach, and his whole body relaxed. It was really right to come to this auction. Chapter 96. Since he won the bid for the strange stone, Qinchuan's mind was no longer on the auction. If it weren't for the fact that he was with Zhu and Yu Kai, he would have already taken the strange stone and left the auction house. In the eyes of others, it might be a stone, but in Qinchuan's eyes, it was a fragment of a stone pillar. Qinchuan would never forget the scene when he touched the bronze square box for the first time. When Qinchuan saw the stone for the first time, he felt that the sea of runes hidden deep in his brain suddenly fluctuated violently. The scene of the shattering of the continent reappeared in his mind, especially in detail. After one of the huge stone pillars shattered, a fist-sized fragment splashed into the depths of the universe and disappeared. But now, the fragment that had disappeared for countless years appeared on the exhibition platform of Guang and Trading Company, and became an auction item whose origin was unknown to anyone. This was also the reason why Qinchuan wanted to buy this stone even if he had to go bankrupt. Although there were many best items in the auction, Qinchuan was not interested in them at all. When the auction was finally over, the Guang and Trading Company finally sent the stone to Qinchuan. Qinchuan tried his best to appear calm and collected when collecting the strange stone. However, when his hand touched the strange stone, he couldn't help but tremble slightly. Yu Kai also saw this scene. It doesn't matter. People who participate in the auction for the first time will be nervous. You've already done a good job. Yu Kai saw Qinchuan's tense expression and trembling hands. She thought that Qinchuan was a little nervous because it was his first time dealing with this kind of thing, so she comforted Qinchuan, trying to calm Qinchuan down. Qinchuan heard this and smiled reluctantly at Yu Kai. He seemed to be a little embarrassed and said, "I am indeed a little nervous." Qinchuan followed Yu Kai's words. However, the reason why he was so nervous was not because it was his first auction, but because he had already obtained the stone. This stone looked nothing special, but when Qinchuan reached out and held it, the stone suddenly became hot, making Qin Chuan feel like he was holding a red-hot soldering iron. But in order not to let others notice the difference, Qin Chuan could only try his best to endure the burning pain. "Let's go." Zhu just glanced at Qin Chuan, and did not suspect anything because of Qin Chuan's slightly strange behavior. She only thought that it was the first time Qin Chuan experienced this kind of thing, so it was inevitable that he would be a little flustered. When they finally returned to the Yu family, because it was already a little late, Qin Chuan naturally refused Yu Kai-er's invitation for supper and directly returned to his room. The moment he entered the room, Qin Chuan, who had endured all the way, finally could not hold back anymore. He swung his hand and threw the stone. Clang! The stone fell on the exquisite floor, making a crisp sound. It still looked ordinary and had no special features. However, what made Qin Chuan heave a sigh of relief was that after he threw away the strange stone, the burning sensation in his palm finally subsided. Phew! Qin Chuan breathed a long sigh of relief, and his mood suddenly became a little excited. Although he did not know the name of the continent, nor did he know what the stone pillar was, he was sure that this stone, which evolved from the fragments of the stone pillar, was definitely not simple. Involuntarily, Qin Chuan looked at the bronze ring on his left little finger. On the way back, he had been restraining himself from letting the stone get close to the bronze ring. Now, he wanted to try and see if the bronze ring would have any special reaction after coming into contact with the stone. At that moment, Qin Chuan picked up the strange stone from the ground and endured the burning sensation as he entered the cultivation room. Then, he carefully placed the strange stone on the ground and extended his left hand to place the bronze ring close to the strange stone. At the instant the bronze ring came into contact with the rock, a strand of dazzling and resplendent golden light suddenly erupted from the rock. In the next moment, the rock actually shattered with a bang, and then a small golden sword that was only the length of a pinky finger was born from within it. This sudden turn of events stunned Qin Chuan. He never would have thought that a sword would jump out from this strange stone. Looking at the small golden sword floating quietly in front of him, Qin Chuan curiously stretched out his hand, wanting to grab the small golden sword and observe it carefully. However, to his surprise, the small golden sword dodged his hand. Qin Chuan was a little stunned. He tried to reach out his hand again, but it was dodged again. When he increased the speed of his hand, the small golden sword dodged even faster. This can't be a living thing, right? Qin Chuan could not help but have such an absurd thought. At this moment, the small golden sword suddenly flashed and arrived in front of Qin Chuan in an instant. The tip of the sword was pointed at Qin Chuan's forehead, and then it gently moved up twice, as if to signal Qin Chuan to raise his hand. Could it really be alive? Qin Chuan was a little confused. What did he buy? As if it felt that Qin Chuan's behavior was too stupid, the small golden sword impatiently circled Qin Chuan twice, and then with a whoosh, it shot straight between Qin Chuan's eyebrows. Then, like a stone falling into water, it strangely disappeared. All of this happened too quickly. Qin Chuan had no time to react. When he realized what had happened, he hurriedly reached out to touch the space between his eyebrows. However, he did not feel the existence of the small golden sword, nor did he feel the wound. Where did that thing go? Qin Chuan glanced around, but there was no trace of the small golden sword. At this moment, Qin Chuan suddenly felt a tremor in his brain. The small golden sword that had disappeared strangely appeared in his brain, floating above his talent Rune. F***ck. No matter how good Qin Chuan's mental fortitude was, he could not help but curse at this time. He never thought that the small golden sword could enter his brain. When Qin Chuan tried to guide the small golden sword out of his brain, the small golden sword violently rejected Qin Chuan's idea. Then the sword waved and decisively cut off the connection with Qin Chuan's mind, as if silently saying to Qin Chuan, "Have you seen a red exclamation mark before?" Faced with this incomparably strange thing, Qin Chuan felt uncomfortable. He had clearly bought a strange stone. How did the strange stone become an ancestor in the blink of an eye? Chapter 97. Qin Chuan repeatedly tried to contact the small golden sword, but to no avail. He could not help but have a ridiculous thought. He seemed to have been blacklisted by the arrogant small golden sword. What the hell is this thing? Qin Chuan felt that his brain was not enough. He looked at the shattered stones on the ground and felt his heart bleed. He had spent 3,000 spiritual value points to buy this treasure, but it had actually blacklisted him. How could he explain himself? Fortunately, although the small golden sword was not under his control, it did not harm him. Since the small golden sword was willing to stay in his mind, he would let it stay there for the time being. After all, he could not do anything to the small golden sword. After thinking through this, Qin Chuan did not give up and tried to contact the small golden sword one last time. The friend request that he sent out was like a stone sinking into the sea. He did not receive any response. He helplessly shook his head and gathered the shattered stones together, preparing to glue them together. This was to prevent people from asking about the mysterious stone's whereabouts, and he would not be able to explain himself. However, Qin Chuan did not expect that when he lightly touched the fragments, the originally indestructible fragments would turn into a pile of dust. Seeing this scene, Qin Chuan was stunned for a moment. Then, he understood that the indestructible thing was not the stones, but the small golden sword. Sooner or later, I will find out where you came from. After resting for an entire night, Qin Chuan woke up at 6 in the morning. He did not immediately start his morning exercise, but instead took out the black moon emblem. According to what Ningya had said, he only needed to activate the emblem after advancing to the qi condensation stage. Then, Ningya would sense it and come to his aid. Now that there was not much time left until the college entrance exams, it was about time for him to report to the Black Moon Combat Academy. When Qin Chuan tried to channel his spiritual energy into the Black Moon emblem, a sharp needle suddenly extended from the emblem and pierced into Qin Chuan's finger, extracting a drop of Qin Chuan's blood. Immediately after, Qin Chuan felt that there was a faint blood connection between him and the Black Moon emblem. Is this blood recognition? This badge is actually an artifact. Qin Chuan was very surprised as he looked at the Black Moon badge in his hand, which was emitting a lustrous light. He never thought that the first magic tool in his life would actually be the Black Moon badge. La la la, I'm happy Lele. Welcome to the Black Moon Combat Academy, student Qin Chuan. Welcome to the Black Moon Combat Academy as a trainee. Just as Qin Chuan was feeling surprised, a cute thumb-sized figure suddenly appeared above the Black Moon emblem. It stood on the emblem and spun around like a fairy. Student Qin Chuan, I know that you must have many questions that you want to ask me. Don't be anxious, take your time. I'll answer them one by one. Lele stopped dancing and stood charmingly on the emblem. She looked at Qin Chuan with a smile and said, Let me introduce myself first. I'm the Black Moon Combat Academy's new student guide. You can call me Lele. My task is to guide the new students to the Black Moon Combat Academy and answer their questions about the academy. Of course, the questions can't be personal or Lele will refuse to answer. Qin Chuan never thought that the Black Moon Combat Academy's new student guide would be an artificial intelligence. You said that you're responsible for my guide? Shouldn't it be the mentor who guides me to the academy? For some reason, Qin Chuan had a bad premonition in his heart. The mentor is only responsible for recruiting new students. He's not responsible for guiding them to the academy. Lele smiled and said to Qin Chuan, The new students have to rely on their own abilities to report to the academy under Lele's guidance. Qin Chuan's face darkened when he heard this. He could not help but grit his teeth and say, I knew that seductress wasn't reliable. A woman's mouth was a liar. After knowing that Ningyu would not appear to guide him, Qin Chuan did not harp on this issue and continued to ask Lei questions. You said that I was a trainee. What did that mean? In the Black Moon Combat Academy, a trainee should not be a freshman, right? Student Qin Chuan, although you've already obtained the Black Moon emblem, if you don't arrive at the Black Moon Combat Academy on time and register successfully, you will lose the qualifications to become an official student of the Black Moon Combat Academy. You can only study in the Black Moon Combat Academy as an auditing student. The privileges and benefits granted to official students and auditing students in the Black Moon Combat Academy are vastly different. After hearing Lei's explanation, Qin Chuan's face could not help but darken again. He had never thought that advancing to the Qi condensation realm and activating the Black Moon emblem was only the beginning of the Black Moon Combat Academy's test for him. He did not even have the qualifications to become an official student of the Black Moon Combat Academy. Looking at the smiling Lei, Qin Chuan had nowhere to vent the anger in his heart. He could only sullenly ask, I want to know where the Black Moon Combat Academy is and how long is the examination period. The Black Moon Combat Academy is located in the Azure Ancient City. It is 24,000 kilometers away from Xiang City, where student Qin Chuan is. The examination period starts from the day the Black Moon emblem is activated, which is a total of 60 days. It was not difficult to travel 24,000 kilometers in 60 days. What made Qin Chuan curious was the Azure Ancient City. According to Qin Chuan's knowledge, there was no such city in the Star Dragon Federation. Where is the Azure Ancient City? Do you have a map? Qin Chuan asked Lei again. Perhaps it was because he knew too little that he had never heard of the Azure Ancient City. However, as long as he had a map, he would definitely know where the Azure Ancient City was located in the Star Dragon Federation. The Azure Ancient City is located in the Black Moon Mountain Range. It was a city that was built during the Great Chaos. Although it is located in the Star Dragon Federation, it is not under the jurisdiction of the Star Dragon Federation. Lei's small hand gently moved and a map appeared in front of Qin Chuan. It was the location of the Black Moon Mountain Range. Black Moon Mountain Range? Qin Chuan could not help but cry out in surprise. The Black Moon Mountain Range was publicly recognized as the most dangerous mountain range in the Star Dragon Federation. The Black Moon Combat Academy was actually built in the Black Moon Mountain Range. No wonder the Black Moon Combat Academy was named after the Black Moon. Looking at the Azure Ancient City in the center of the Black Moon Mountain Range on the map, Qin Chuan could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. He said, You want me to go through the Black Moon Mountain Range alone to report to the Academy? Are you trying to kill me? Even Foundation establishment cultivators did not dare to go too deep into the Black Moon Mountain Range. What was the difference between sending a mere first-level Qi condensation brat to the center of the Black Moon Mountain Range? Where there's a will, there's a way. Lei giggled and said to Qin Chuan, What if you're only missing an arm or a leg and you're not dead? Qin Chuan's mouth fiercely twitched. You're the one who's missing an arm or a leg. Your whole family is missing an arm or a leg. Chapter 98. Qin Chuan was very sorrowful, especially sorrowful. He originally thought that joining the Black Moon Combat Academy was a wise choice, but he never thought that the Black Moon Combat Academy would be such a scam. This made Qin Chuan have an impulse to contact Zhou Lin and ask her to join the Cosmic Sky Academy, but an impulse was just an impulse. After calming down, Qin Chuan decided to go to the Black Moon Mountain Range and give it a try. What if it worked? If I don't try, how will I know I can't? Qin Chuan sat up from his bed with a bitter face and a long sigh. 2 months seemed like a long time, but the Black Moon Mountain Range was filled with danger. He had stayed in the Cloud Dragon Mountain Range for 3 months and still didn't dare to get too close to the center, so what about the Black Moon Mountain Range? Therefore, he had to hurry to the Black Moon Mountain Range. But before that, he had to safely leave Western Sun City. After thinking it over, Qin Chuan finally decided to ask for help from the people around him. If there was anyone around him who understood Western Sun City the most and who he trusted the most, it would definitely be Yu Kai. Without further ado, Qin Chuan used his photon computer to contact Yu Kai and quickly saw her. Qin Chuan, why are you looking for me in such a hurry? What's the matter? Yu Kai happily came to Qin Chuan's room and looked at Qin Chuan with a smile, waiting for Qin Chuan's reply. I'm preparing to leave Western Sun City, but I'm worried that the Li family will take revenge on me. Do you have any way to help me? Qin Chuan lightly coughed and awkwardly told Yu Kai the reason why he was looking for her. As a man, he wanted to rely on a girl to help him escape Western Sun City. This was too shameful. Even if Qin Chuan's skin was very thick, he still felt embarrassed. Yu Kai knew that Qin Chuan would leave sooner or later, but she didn't think that it would be so early. She looked at Qin Chuan with some reluctance and asked, "Can't you stay for a few more days? When the time comes, I'll arrange for someone to escort you. I guarantee that no one will have any ideas about you." Qin Chuan shook his head and said, "I have something important to do, so I have to leave now." The matter of leaving for the Black Moon Mountain Range should not be delayed, and could not be delayed. Seeing Qin Chuan's attitude, Yu Kai's expression, and whispered, "The important thing you're talking about, it can't be that you have to report to the academy, right? How did you guess that? Qin Chuan? How did you guess?" Seeing the change in Qin Chuan's expression, Yu Kai couldn't help feeling wronged in her heart. She knew that Qin Chuan was in such a hurry to leave because he wanted to go to Cosmic Star Academy as soon as possible, so that he could see the senior sister of his dreams. I know, I'll help you. Yu Kai You can leave Xiang City. Once you reach a safe place, you can leave at any time. Thank you so much. Qin Chuan was very happy. The Li family should not be able to find out if he left Xiang City without anyone knowing. Seeing Qin Chuan's happy expression, Yu Kai really wanted to ask Qin Chuan, was he really that impatient to see that senior? But when the words came to her mouth, she could not bring herself to say it. She could only hold it in. This feeling of single-handedly facilitating the meeting of the person she liked with another girl was simply too unbearable. "I'll leave first." Yu Kai suddenly turned around and left. She was afraid that if she did not leave, she would cry. Seeing Yu Kai leave in a hurry, Qin Chuan scratched his head in puzzlement. Everything was fine. What was going on? In the afternoon, Yu Kai arranged for Qin Chuan to hide in the Yu family's transport vehicle. However, the person who did this was not Yu Kai but Yu Kai's personal maidservant. "Miss asked me to tell you that she doesn't want to say goodbye to you in person. If there is a chance in the future, you two should meet again." Hearing the maidservant's words, Qin Chuan nodded and said to the maidservant, "Please also tell your miss that I am looking forward to meeting her next time." After saying this, Qin Chuan took his luggage and walked into the carriage of the transport vehicle. When they were far away from Xiang City, the driver of the transport vehicle would naturally contact him. Vroom vroom vroom. Dozens of transport vehicles slowly left the Yu family's manor and drove out of Xiang City. Yu Kai stood at the highest point of the manor, looking at the transport vehicle slowly leaving the manor with a very complicated expression. She was in a very low mood. "Why didn't you send him off personally?" A Zhu slowly walked over and stood beside Yu Kai, asking curiously. Yu Kai bit her lower lip and said in a low voice, "He is in such a hurry to leave because he wants to see his senior sister in advance." A Zhu understood. She looked deeply at Yu Kai and said, "Since you know that you can't get him, it is better to just give up. Otherwise, you will be in trouble." "I know, but this is the first time I like a boy so much." Tears blurred Yu Kai's eyes, and the long transport vehicle finally disappeared from her sight. In the carriage, Qin Chuan sat on the chair specially prepared for him by Yu Kai, drinking fruit juice and eating snacks. He was enjoying himself quite a bit. Although hiding in the transport vehicle was very secretive and very few people knew about it, Qin Chuan still didn't relax his vigilance. He knew that there was no danger now, but it didn't mean that there wouldn't be any danger after he left the transport vehicle. Therefore, it was very important to eat as much as possible and store up physical strength. After the transport vehicle slowly drove all the way north for 4 hours, it finally left the boundary of Xi'an City and began to speed up. When the sun set, the transport vehicle slowly stopped next to a small hillside, where Qin Chuan got off. Standing on the hillside, Qin Chuan watched the transport vehicle go away, and then looked back in the direction of Xi'an City. Sure enough, there were 2 shuttles flying at high speed. When the 2 shuttles were less than 50 meters away from Qin Chuan, they slowly came to a stop. The cockpits of the 2 shuttles opened at the same time, and a man and a woman walked out from within. "I knew you wouldn't let me go so easily." Qin Chuan sighed helplessly. The thing he was most worried about had happened. "Qin Chuan, come with us." The woman looked at Qin Chuan indifferently and said, "You have been a guest of the Yu family for so many days, it is time for you to come to our Li family." Chapter 99. As early as the first day Qin Chuan had moved into the Yu clan, Li Man had already secretly activated the spies the Li clan had placed in the Yu clan's manor to closely monitor Qin Chuan's every move. Just as Yu Kai had arranged for Qin Chuan to secretly take the transport vehicle to leave, Li Man had already received the news and had been waiting on the road the transport convoy had to pass. Therefore, Li Man wasn't surprised to see Qin Chuan's figure here. Similarly, Qin Chuan wasn't surprised to see Li Man here. If the Li clan really allowed him to leave Xi'an City so easily, then they wouldn't be worthy of continuing to establish themselves in Xi'an City. Your Li clan is really taking advantage of your power to bully others. I'm just a poor brat with no background and no backing. What else can I do but wait to be captured? Qin Chuan sighed and walked towards Li Man with a helpless expression. It seemed that he really intended to give up resistance and let himself be dealt with. Seeing that Qin Chuan didn't have any intention of resisting, Li Man couldn't help but reveal a disdainful smile. Everyone around her had told her not to underestimate Qin Chuan and to be careful, but a mere first-layer qi condensation ant really wasn't worthy of her attention. Just look, she was simply standing there, but the deterrent force had already made Qin Chuan lose all will to resist and obediently submit. It's good that you're willing to cooperate. Once we reach the Li clan, as long as you're obedient, you naturally won't suffer. Ah Gang, go and tie him up for me. Li Man casually glanced at the subordinate standing next to her and motioned for him to tie up Qin Chuan. Although she wasn't afraid of Qin Chuan resisting, he still had to be tied up. Receiving the signal, Ah Gang took the rope and walked towards Qin Chuan. Just as he approached Qin Chuan, the corners of Qin Chuan's mouth suddenly curled up slightly. He said to him in a strange tone, "I'm guessing that your strength shouldn't be at the foundation establishment stage, right?" Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Ah Gang instinctively felt a trace of danger and subconsciously stopped approaching Qin Chuan. However, at this time, Qin Chuan moved. He suddenly exerted force on his feet and brazenly pounced towards Ah Gang, who was approaching him. Seeing Qin Chuan pouncing towards himself, Ah Gang subconsciously made a counterattack, but when he saw the blue lightning suddenly flickering in Qin Chuan's right palm, his pupils couldn't help but suddenly shrink. This is sizzle. A strong burst of lightning suddenly erupted from Qin Chuan's right palm. It flickered and instantly appeared in front of Ah Gang, ruthlessly hitting Ah Gang's chest. In an instant, the violent lightning surged and turned into a lightning net, completely enveloping Ah Gang. Under the cover of the lightning net, Ah Gang's face was distorted and ferocious. He opened his mouth and let out a shrill scream. In just a short breath, his combat uniform was destroyed, and his exposed skin instantly became a charred color. Plop! Gang fell to the ground, his body twitching uncontrollably. White foam kept coming out of his mouth, as if he had been seriously injured. Li Man Man looked at Gang, who had fallen to the ground in shock. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Gang, who was at the 6th level of the Qi refining stage, was actually defeated by Qin Chuan in just one move. How is this possible? Li Man Man exclaimed. She couldn't help but turn to look at Qin Chuan, her eyes full of horror. Phew! Qin Chuan let out a long breath, and then he took a deep look at Li Man Man and said, I'll treat this fellow as interest. Facing Gang, who was much stronger than him, Qin Chuan had to catch him off guard and kill him in one move if he wanted to win. He had pretended to give up resisting and approached Li Man Man. His original intention was to defeat Li Man Man in an instant, then use her to threaten Gang. However, he didn't expect Li Man Man to let Gang tie him up. In desperation, Qin Chuan could only use the ultimate move that he had originally intended to use on Li Man Man on Gang. This so-called ultimate move was a mini version of the domain power that was born after Qin Chuan's brain reached the perfect state. Although the effect of this move was obvious and directly crippled Gang, it also made Qin Chuan extremely tired. He almost didn't have the strength to continue fighting. At this time, he was holding a mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone that he had obtained from Gua Hao in his left hand. He was crazily absorbing the thunder and spiritual power within it to replenish his own consumption. Li Man Man could be considered as someone who had seen big scenes. At this time, when she saw Qin Chuan standing still, panting heavily and sweating all over, she instantly understood. Qin Chuan, with his strength at the 1st level of the Qi refining stage, had defeated Gang, who was at the 6th level of the Qi refining stage, in an instant. He must have used a killer move that consumed a lot of energy. At this time, he was exhausted and had no strength to continue fighting. After understanding this, Li Man Man's mind calmed down. However, when she thought about how she had been frightened by Qin Chuan, who was only at the 1st level of the Qi refining stage, her heart was filled with shame and anger. She couldn't help but shout angrily, "Go to hell!" At this time, Li Man Man already had the intention to kill Qin Chuan. She wanted to make this ant, who had humiliated her, disappear from this world forever. Facing the charging Li Man Man, Qin Chuan didn't care about any elegance. He rolled on the ground and dodged Li Man Man's angry attack in an extremely embarrassing way. Then, he got up from the ground and quickly ran toward Gang's shuttle. If he wanted to escape, he had to use the shuttle. However, at this time, Qin Chuan was very weak. His legs were weak, and he couldn't run fast at all. In the blink of an eye, Li Man Man had caught up with him. "Damn woman, I'll fight you to the death!" At this time, Qin Chuan suddenly roared. He suddenly turned around and flung his left hand, throwing an azure lightning at Li Man Man. Facing the incoming lightning, Li Man Man immediately revealed a terrified expression and dodged in a panic. Qin Chuan took advantage of this opportunity to immediately widen the distance between them and quickly ran to the side of Gang's shuttle. At this time, the lightning that was thrown by Qin Chuan hit the ground with a bang, revealing its original appearance. It was the mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone that Qin Chuan had been holding in his hand. The bright lightning was only a part of the thunder power contained in the mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone that Qin Chuan had drawn out. It looked frightening, but it didn't have any lethality at all. Seeing the mid-grade Thunder Spirit Stone fall to the ground, Li Man Man almost went crazy. She stared hatefully at Qin Chuan, who had already jumped onto the shuttle, and said angrily, "Qin Chuan, I must kill you." However, Qin Chuan, who had already entered the shuttle and successfully closed the hatch, completely ignored Li Man Man, who had completely gone berserk. after starting the shuttle, he immediately flew away like lightning. Seeing this, Li Man didn't hesitate and immediately jumped into her own shuttle. She started the shuttle and chased after him. As for Ah Gang, who was lying on the ground, no one cared about his life at this time. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.